and I'd like to call the meeting to order now that we have quorum. We're going to start with a roll call that will be conducted by our Chief Legal Counsel, Rafael.
Thank you, Vito. Mohammed Abusalam.
Present.
Kim Barrett. Dan Bernal. George Blumenthal.
Here.
Maria Bonneville.
Present.
Linda Boxer. Monica Carson.
Here.
Judy Chow.
Here.
Thank you. Carol Christ. Leonda Clark Harvey.
Present.
Anne-Marie Duliege. Isabel Duran. Leon Fine.
Present.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Here.
Fred Fisher.
Here.
Elena Flowers. Judy Gasson.
Here.
Larry Goldstein.
Here.
David Higgins.
Present.
Vito Bashani.
Here.
Steve Julesgaard.
Go back to him because he got back out, he's coming back in.
Who?
Steve Jules.
Steve, okay. All right. Rich Lahara.
Present.
Pat Levitt.
Here.
Linda Malkus.
Here.
Chris Skowski.
Here.
Lauren Miller-Rogan.
Here.
Adriana Padilla.
Here.
Joe Panetta.
Here.
Marv Southard. Suzanne Sandmeyer.
Present.
Carol Watson.
Here.
Kevin Zhu. Kevin.
Kevin, you are on mute.
Here.
Thank you. Keith Yamamoto.
Here.
Thank you. Steve Julesgaard.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you, Chief Legal Counsel Rafael. I'd like to direct the board members to the consent calendar next. It consists of agenda items number 3 and 4. 3 is the consideration of the minutes from the last meeting, which I hope you've taken a look at. And item number 4 are the requests to attend remotely from 3 board members. The chair will entertain a motion to accept corrections to the minutes or anything else related to the consent calendar.
Move we approve the consent calendar.
We have a motion from board member Blumenthal. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Second. Any discussion? Any comment from the public on the consent calendar?
There are no hands raised.
No hands are raised. We can proceed to a vote, Rafael.
Thank you. Just do this. Muhammad Abusalam.
Yes.
Thank you. Kim Barrett. George Blumenthal.
Yes.
Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Linda Boxer. Monica Carson.
Yes.
Judy Chow. Judy.
Yes.
Thank you. Carol Christ. Leonda Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Anne-Marie Liege. Isabel Duran. Leon Fine.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
Elena Flowers. Judy Gasson.
Yes.
Larry Goldstein.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Vito Bashani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Pat Levitt.
Yes.
Linda Malkus.
Yes.
Chris Mayaskowski.
Yes.
Lauren Miller-Rogan. Lauren, you still with us? Okay. Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southard. Marv,
Yes.
thank you. Suzanne Sandmeyer.
Yes.
Carol Watson.
Yes.
Kevin Zhu.
Yes.
Keith Yamamoto.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. If I can orient everyone to the agenda, the next 4 items on the agenda in order will be numbers, agenda items number 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we will proceed now to item number 7. This is the Shared Labs Concept Amendment, and our discussion presentation will be led by Uta Grieshammer. And Rosa Canet Aviles, I think you're on also. Who's presenting?
I think Rosa's presenting.
Rosa.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on behalf of Dr. Grishammer and the Scientific Programs and Education team, I'll be presenting this amendment today. Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board and the public, in advance of Dr. Zambrano's presentation, which is item number 8 for the Application Review Subcommittee consideration of the Shared Resource Labs Grant Working Group recommendations, our team is presenting an amendment for your consideration and vote. Next. For context purposes, this slide provides us a timeline representation of the key milestones in the development and implementation of the Shared Resource Labs program. The board approved this concept back in October of 2022 and subsequently approved an amendment in December to change the structure of the leadership team commitment. Since then, as you can see in this slide, we had the posting of the RFA, we had the applications as well as a webinar for applicants to understand what we were looking for. And then we had the grants working group review and the facilities working group reviews. And we are coming to you today before the ARS decision to ask you to consider an amendment with regards to the program budget detail. Importantly, we are not going to be asking for a change in total budget, only a detail on how it was approved back in 2022, which would allow to increase the total number of awards that can be made with the same total budget allocation. Next slide. Thank you, Claudette. I'll not delve into an overview of this program, as Dr. Zambrano will be going over this today. However, for the purposes of this concept amendment, and as a quick reminder, in order to ensure broad access, which was one of the goals of this program, one of the major goals, to ensure broad access to stem cell-based models across California, we created 2 types of award opportunities for the Shared Resource Labs program. One was the establishing SRLs. These were intended to provide access to stem cell-based modeling expertise in geographic areas where access to models is limited. And the other type was the enhancing and expansion SRLs, which have been designed to target institutions that have cutting-edge stem cell-based modeling expertise. These 2 types of SRLs would ultimately lead to fulfilling the objectives of this opportunity, which you can see are in these 4 bullet points. The main goals were to broaden access to stem cell-based models across California. The second was to advance standards and reproducibility of stem cell-based models. The third was to increase the access to educational opportunities in stem cell-based techniques, and this is obviously within the network as well of our education programs. And the fourth is to develop a sustainable stem cell core infrastructure, and that's important because it's the first program that we implemented a sustainability plan. We are piloting a new model here. We envision that funded SRLs will function as a network as well. Next slide, Claudette. This is just a reminder of the structure of the individual awards and the amounts allocated to each type of award. The main point that I want to make here is that the total amount awarded was different for the 2 types, reflecting the fact that the establishing SRLs have a budget for renovating core facility space, while the other ones do not, and both have a budget for equipping and operations. Now, the next slide is next slide. So in okay, thank you. I had the animation, so I will go point by point, but that's all good. On our introductory slide, we mentioned that this amendment is not asking for a change in the total budget. We are asking for a change on how the limits were approved back in 2022. On the left graphic, we have the original budget limits. Back when the concept was approved, the original budget of 50 million limited the amount of operational budget to 24 million and the build and equip to 26 million. Now, if we remove the limit on operational funds, currently at 24 million, and allow any unused build and equip funds to be used for operation, this could allow for 2 more funded applications. So what we are proposing is to remove the limits of the operational budget and to be able to use some build and equip. This does not change the overall 50 million budget allocation. It does not exceed the 26 million spending on build and equip that is allocated by Proposition 14. And if approved, this is what's important and why we are coming before the ARS presentation by Dr. Zambrano. This amendment will increase the total number of awards that can be made with the same total budget allocation. Next slide. So with that, I would like to ask the board to consider the approval to remove the limit of operational funds initially set at $24 million. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Rosa, for that presentation. Before we discuss, we should probably have a motion.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and second to consider the amendment. Board Member Blumenthal.
Thank you. You mentioned the fact that we would not be using the full $26 million for construction. And could you go into a little bit more depth there about why that money is not needed?
Yeah, so initially, as on slide number 4, we had the budget for the establishing SRLs and the enhancing and expansions. When we first set up this budget, we thought we were going to get more establishing SRLs, which require more build to renovate budget. And the applications that we had, we ended up with less of those. And of those, as you will see by Dr. Zambrano, there is only one recommended for funding. So we are left with a lot more building budget to spend that could be used for operations, whereas the operations budget has been used by all of them. So we've exhausted the operation budget.
Thank
you. Of Dr. Canetabiles? I don't see any. Does any member of the public want to comment on the proposed amendment?
There are no hands raised.
There are no hands raised. I think we're ready to proceed to a vote on the amendment. Raphael, if you would do the honors.
Great, thank you very much. Mohammed Abu Salam.
Yes.
Thank you. George Blumenthal.
Yes.
Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Monica Carson.
Yes.
Judy Chow.
Yes.
Thank you. Leander Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Leon Fine.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
Judy Gasson.
Yes.
Larry Goldstein.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Vito Mbashiani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard.
Abstain.
Abstain? Thank you.
I'm not sure I can vote on this.
Steve, you can vote on this item.
All right, then, yes.
Thank you. Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Pat Levitt.
Yes.
Linda Malkus.
Yes.
Chris Mayaskowski.
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan. Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southard. Suzanne Sandmeyer.
Yes.
Carol Watson. Carol.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Kevin Zhu.
Yes.
Keith Yamamoto.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now that we have passed the amendment to the Shared Resources Laboratory concept, let's proceed to the applications. This is agenda item number 8. The discussion will be led by Gil Sombrano. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm sharing my screen here, and let me set up the presentation. So I'm going to present to you the recommendations both from the Grants Working Group and Facilities Working Group for the Shared Research Laboratories. And as always, we start with our mission to accelerate world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. So the Shared Research Laboratories is an extension of our 5-year strategic plan, develop competency hubs, build knowledge networks, and build a diverse and highly skilled workforce. So all of these elements that are part of our strategic themes are a part of the Shared Laboratories program. And of course, the Shared Laboratories program is something that is specifically called out in Prop 14 as something that the Institute should continue to embark on. And so the program itself is structured in order to achieve several things, mainly to provide researchers, both locally and regionally, access to cell culture facilities where they can conduct stem cell-based modeling experiments and other highly specialized technologies. Also access to well-characterized, unmodified, and modified human pluripotent stem cell collections, partially or fully differentiated stem cell-based models, and training of individual investigators. So that means any research investigator who is interested in learning about these stem cell models or human pluripotent stem cell lines can come to these shared labs to learn how to utilize them, how to culture them, and so on. In addition, it provides a formal techniques course for student education and other student experiences. The formal techniques course is optional, but I think most of the applicants requested funds to conduct a formal techniques course. And this allows these institutions to provide such courses to, for example, the Bridges students. So often it's been the case that Bridges students take these courses as part of their educational program. We also ask them all to implement a sustainability plan. So to develop a fee-for-service or recharge or other alternative funding sources with which they can continue to maintain operations even beyond CIRM support. So again, just to reiterate a little bit of what already has been said, there are two different types of programs. You have the establishing shared resource laboratories that are intended to fund the those programs in geographic areas where access to these models is limited. And as such, these are new programs that would require renovation of core space and acquisition of major equipment. The other type is the enhancing, expanding. Here we expect that these programs already have laboratory space where cutting edge stem cell based modeling is occurring, but the goal here is to expand or enhance those capabilities and make them accessible to others. But we are providing funds for them to acquire major equipment that would allow them to make that kind of enhancement or expansion. For all of them, the operations are focused on providing access, as mentioned in the previous slides, to share their models, train researchers, and provide educational resources. Also, as mentioned, the idea behind these programs is to have a network that is built from the establishing as well as the enhancing and CIRM staff and CIRM itself to develop a set of best practices to share in the learnings of each of the institutions and create a greater whole through this process. And so this mimics what we've done with the Alpha Clinics in manufacturing network and trying to join all of these different programs in order to synergize their efforts. We already showed this slide that shows a little bit more detail about the different elements behind the establishing versus enhancing expansion SRLs, including the award amounts. The only other thing I'll add here is that there is a co-funding requirement for the enhancing expansion SRLs of 20% of their operational costs. There was no co-funding required for the establishing. Also important to know is that the structure of these awards is such that all of the programs will go through different phases during the award period. So for the establishing SRLs, there's a phase A, which goes through 18 months, which allows them to renovate their space before they actually begin operations. Phase B is the operations phase, where they launch the program and open their services. And then a phase C, which is the last 18 months of the award, where the operational funds provided by CIRM is cut to 50%, and where they begin to implement their sustainability plan and contribute the other 50%, with the goal of eventually becoming completely self-sustained. The enhancing expansion SRLs also go through this 3-phase step, but the initial phase A is only 6 months. Since there is no renovation happening for them, they are focused on really staffing and equipping their lab, which can happen much more quickly. Other elements that must be included in these plans is that they must include a plan to address DEI, including how SRL core users and recipients of the models represent diverse goals, approaches, and perspectives and backgrounds, participation in the educational components by underserved populations, that the team itself represents and is aware of diverse and inclusive perspectives and experiences, and the inclusion of ancestral and sex diversity within the stem cell lines that are offered in the core. We ask that all of them include a knowledge sharing plan in order to share models, best practices, and to better function as a network. Also to include a data sharing and management plan. And then also to help in the coordination and networking aspect of the program as a whole, we are going to coordinate a steering committee that includes all of the program directors from each of the awardees, as well as any external stakeholders that can help facilitate the development of processes, standards, best practices, and so on. And also just develop collaborative approaches from their learnings that can help improve the reproducibility of stem cell-based models. Okay, so that's a summary of the program itself. So I'm going to go over the reviews, and this was a little bit complex because we had 2 working groups that were involved in reviewing some of these, the ones that had renovation. So we have, for the establishing 6.1 program, there were 6 applications that were submitted and reviewed. For the 6.2 expanding and enhancing, there were 14 applications that were submitted and reviewed, so a total of 20. The establishing 6.1 required both review by the grants working group to assess the scientific plan and merit of doing the proposed scientific activities of the lab, and also a facilities working group review where they assessed the details of the renovation plans that they had proposed. For the expanding and enhancing, because those did not have a renovation component, those only required a grants working group review and not a facilities working group review. Okay, so I'm going to give you the sort of the mandate behind the grants working group and how the group was composed, and compare that to facilities working group. So for the grants working group, the 20 applications were reviewed by this group that had and was composed of 15 scientific grants working group members who did the scientific evaluation and provided scientific scores on all the applications. We had our grants working group board members who provided the patient perspective on DEI elements, significance and potential impact, and of course provided oversight on the process, and they provided a suggested scientific score. We did not make use of scientific specialists since this was a very focused review within the Shared Labs program. The scoring system that was used by the grants working group was the score of 1, 2, or 3, with 1 meaning that those applications have exceptional merit and warrant funding. A score of 2 means it needs improvement and wouldn't warrant funding at this time. And so those may be resubmitted if the application review subcommittee feels that there is appropriate room to fund additional applications beyond what has already been funded. Those that receive a score of 3 are thought to be sufficiently flawed that this does not warrant any funding. So the basis for the score is based on these 5 key criteria. Does the project offer a significant value proposition in terms of what they intend to do, in terms of how they offer access to the community and the types of models that they ultimately are going to provide to the community? Do they have a well-planned and designed approach to making these offerings available? Is it feasible? And if they propose a stem cell techniques course, is that well designed? And does the project overall uphold the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion? All right, so that's the grants working group. Now the facilities working group, which looked at the 6 establishing applications as well, is composed of 4 real estate experts. And so those real estate experts evaluate all of the facilities components that are part of this application and provide a score on all the applications. But we also have board members from the ICOC who are part of the facilities working group. So there are, if I remember correctly, I think 9 board members who provide the patient perspective on the significance and potential impact, oversight on the process, and they also provide a score on the applications. The scoring scheme is the same for the facilities working group, 1, 2, or 3, with the same basically narrative for each of the score types. The criteria, however, that are used to come up with these scores are different. They're focused on the facilities components. So the first one is, does the proposed renovation and facilities improvement project support the applicant's proposed or research and educational activities? Are the renovations and facility improvements feasible as proposed? Does the proposed SRL facility include the appropriate research equipment and laboratory configuration in support of those activities? And are the renovation facility improvement costs appropriate? And finally, does the applicant ensure diversity, equity, inclusion goals for the design and construction elements of the application? And so those are the criteria that went to the facilities working group's assessment of those applications. So given that there is a little bit of complexity with these, I'm going to try to carefully go over what the recommendations of the working groups are, as well as what CIRM's recommendations are based on those outcomes from the working groups. So what I'm showing you here is a table of the 6 applications that came in for the establishing 6.1 program. So in the first blue columns, you see the grants working group score And then next to it, the 1, 2, 3, that is how many members of the working group gave a score of 1, 2, or 3. So you see that the grants working group gave 3 applications out of the 6 a score of 1, and the other 3 received a score of 2. Now in orange, you see the facilities working scores. There was 4 applications that received a score of 1 from their facilities working group because they felt the facilities components were adequate to receive such a score, and then 2 applications that received a score of 2 because they felt there were some elements that needed additional work. So as it happens, you can see in the top row, there is only 1 application that got a 1 from both the grants working group and the facilities working group. But, you know, that is a clear recommendation across the board. And so the CIRM recommendation is to fund that application. For the remaining applications, you have these next 2, which got a 1 from the grants working group, but 2s from the facilities working group. So our recommendation for those is to have the applicants revise their facility component proposal and have the facilities working group look at those revisions and determine whether they have addressed the concerns of the facilities working group. And then for the last 3, which did fine in the facilities working group, but got a 2 for the grants from the grants working group for their scientific plan, our recommendation is that they revise the scientific proposal and the grants working group re-examine those applications once they resubmit. All right, so those are the recommendations related to the 6.1 establishing program. For the 6.2 expanding and enhancing, as mentioned earlier, there were 14 applications. Now these did not have any renovation elements to them. So even though I included these columns here, there was no facilities working group assessment for these applications. That was solely a grants working group assessment of the scientific value of these programs. And as you can see, there are some applications that got a score of 1, some that got a score of 2, and some that got a score of 3. So based on this, our recommendation is to fund the 4 that got a score of 1 by the grants working group. For those that got a score of 2, we recommend that these 6 applications revise and resubmit their proposal to the grants working group for review in order to address concerns. And then for the 4 that received a score of 3, to recommend that the application review subcommittee not fund those 4 applications. Okay, now in terms of budget, if you were to fund the 1 establishing shared research lab, which I showed you in the first table, that had both a recommendation from facilities working group and grants working group, the budget required for that is $5.4 million. For the 4 applications in the 6.2 group that had a recommendation from the grants working group, those 4 would use up about $16 million. So the total is $21.3 million to fund those that have a clear recommendation from the respective working groups. That leaves a balance of about 28.6 or 28.7 million that is able to support up to 6 additional awards. So that means if I go back here, you have 6 that received a score of 2 from the enhancing, as well as 3 got a score of 2 from the grants working group in the establishing, and then the 2 that got twos from the facilities working group. So you have a total of 11 that would be revising and resubmitting applications to one or the other working group. And we would ultimately be able to fund 6 of those, just to be clear on ultimately what we can fund. So those are the recommendations of the working group, and you have the tables as part of the materials that were provided to you along with the summaries. So I will stop here and take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sembrano. I was going to compliment you on an extraordinary presentation to making this very clear until I realized that you are in the habit of making extraordinary presentations seem ordinary. So thank you for that. Let's proceed now to questions directly addressed to Gil, and then I'm going to take a prerogative to explain the complicated voting system that is going to support the realization of this agenda item.
And the conflicts as well.
And the conflicts of interest. This may be the most complicated board voting exercise that certainly that I've ever seen. And I'll give you a roadmap to it when we're done with questions to Dr. Sembrano. Thank you. Board members?
Joe Panetta has a hand raised.
Joe Panetta is down in San.
Thanks, Vito, and I agree, Gil. That was just a terrific presentation. You explained it so well. I don't have a question about the current applications. My concern is you said that there are 11 applications that can come back in with revisions and potentially receive scores of 1, but you can only fund 6. I can't remember if we've been in a position like this before. What happens, just hypothetically, if more than 6 of those, 10 of those come in and they're all 1s?
Right. So we would bring those recommendations to the application review subcommittee for consideration. Now, typically, they're not all unanimous in terms of the scoring. So we will have some level of granularity that we can see that would allow us to distinguish among those, as well as recommendations from CIRM staff that can provide some guidance as to what might make the best decision for what to fund. Some of the elements that the board may also want to consider are the number of establishing versus enhancing, expanding programs that you want to fund, as well as the geographic distribution of these laboratories that you may also want to take into account in terms of ultimately what to fund. So I think those elements are something that we would bring to you, and we would try to synthesize those as best we could based on whatever recommendations come from the respective working groups for these applications.
Thank you.
Are there any other hands? There are no other comments from board members or questions. Is there any member of the general public?
We don't have a motion.
We don't have a motion. Thank you for that. Right.
You would ask for a motion.
Yeah. The chair will entertain a motion to proceed with voting on the applications.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Who's first?
Who made the motion? Marvin?
Marv and Fred.
Fred seconded. Thank you.
Motion.
What is the motion? Can we clarify the motion?
Motion to vote on the applications.
Say what? Yes, right. I'm going to do that now. Right. All right. So we have a motion. Before we proceed, let me explain. As Gil Sembrano just explained, this is complicated in several ways. One, we have 3 tiers, but we have 2 working groups making recommendations. In some cases, they align, in some cases, they don't. So here's what I propose. And by the way, I need to mention that we are in the application review subcommittee phase of this board meeting, which means the votes will come from some board members and not others. And I'm going to put the following 8 points on this roadmap in a particular order 8 steps because of who is conflicted on the board. And I've grouped them so that the conflicts align in steps 1 through 4, and then the conflicts change for numbers 5 through 8. And this is the following, what I'm going to propose you support through your motions. Number 1, I'm going to ask if there are any applications in Tier 3 that you want to fund by moving to Tier 1. Then I will ask if there are any applications in Tier 3 that you want to move up to Tier 2, which means to be funded, but only after reconsideration and going back to the review committee. Number 3, then to look at applications in Tier 1 or Tier 2, do you want to not fund them by moving to Tier 3? And then finally, we'll close this section by asking that we close out all applications in Tier 3, which is to say, do not fund. This may sound redundant, but for reasons I just explained, it's imperative. Then I'll move on to the second part with different conflicts of interest at force here. I'll ask if there are any items in Tier 2 that you would like to move up immediately to be funded in Tier 1. Then I'll ask if you want to move any items in Tier 1 down to Tier 2. Then we will close out Tier 2, which is do not fund, but we'll go back to re-review. I think I might have misspoken a little while ago. Tier 2 means do not fund, but will be re-reviewed. And finally, we'll close out this entire discussion by funding all remaining applications in Tier 1.
Right.
There's no test on this, but I will go over at each point what we're about to do. Okay?
All right, and if I may, we have some conflicts here. So the following members are precluded from voting, speaking, or making any motions on any of the applications here. Members Bonneville, Clark Harvey, Jules Gard, Fisher Colbury, Watson, and Dudon, but she's not here. And the following members can vote, speak, and make a motion after the Tier 3s have been cleared. So the fourth motion as, I think.
You want to hold off on that second part?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, we'll come to that one. Remind me at step 4.
Okay.
All right, so the chair, moving on to.
Hold on, but they still can't speak until they're cleared. So it's Mayaskowski, Bernal, and Flowers. Thank you.
Sorry there.
That's all right.
Great, okay. So the chair would like to start this process by entertaining motions to move items in Tier 3, do not fund, to Tier 1 to be funded.
Is there a motion?
I do not. There's no hands raised. There's no motion.
Okay.
So next
Yeah.
motion.
Right, okay, thank you. Now, board members, are there any applications in Tier 3 you would like to move up to Tier 2, which is do not fund but will be re-reviewed? Seeing no hands, moving on to number 3. Is there any application in the fund Tier 1 category that you want to move down to Tier 2 or Tier 3? I don't see the gallery, so you'll have to help me. Are there any hands?
There's no board members that have.
No board members, okay. All right, the chair would like to entertain a motion to close out, to say do not fund Tier 3. I will need a motion on
You
this.
need a motion here.
Oh, sorry.
Can you restate the motion?
Yeah, the motion is to close out Tier 3 applications, i.e. do not fund the Tier 3s.
So moved.
Fred Fisher?
That's Fred Fisher. Do we have-
Second, Pat Levitt.
Pat cannot.
Pat cannot.
It must be a member of the ARS.
Oh, okay, forget it.
So,
So that's still me, right?
I'll second.
Thank you, Marv.
thank you, Murph.
Marv, okay. We have a motion to close out Tier 3, do not fund that set of applications. Discussion from board members. Are there any members of the general public that want to make a comment? We have 2 hands raised?
Yes, there are 2 hands raised.
Yes, right. Joe, remind the members of the public who wish to speak, they have 3 minutes, but it must be on the motion.
So this is related to the motion to not fund the tier 3 applications. So if you're commenting on not funding tier 3 applications, please raise your hand. We have first on hand, Evan Snyder, you will have 3 minutes. We will keep the time.
Tell me when to begin, please. Can you hear me? When should I begin? Hello? Can you hear me? I speak on behalf of the Sanford Burnham Prebys application, which was dedicated to stem cell high throughput biology and drug discovery. And not only training in that cutting edge technology, but also teaching basic stem cell skills. I am not going to rebut our critiques, though some were scientifically off base, or plea for immediate funding. We did not score well, we believe, not because we did not have depth of talent, personnel, resources, experience, and a 20-year track record of productivity and impact to accomplish the cutting-edge program we proposed, but rather because we did a poor job of demonstrating that we have accomplished and continue to accomplish everything we proposed. We relied too much on our reputation in the high-throughput field. We propose to be the first CIRM SRL doing high-throughput biology and drug discovery and bringing it to California investigators and clinicians through the use of patient-derived iPSCs, while continuing our long-standing mission to engage and mentor less experienced stem cell investigators, helping them enter the drug discovery pipeline, which will likely define the goals of disease modeling for the next generation. However, although we were criticized for being overly ambitious, only a CRO could do what we're doing, this program is precisely what we are already doing now. We please simply request just the opportunity to resubmit and constrains the scope a bit, but most importantly highlights what we actually accomplish every day, much as we did in the letter to you. We know that CIRM takes disease modeling seriously. Therefore, it must have a drug discovery core to exploit those data. High throughput technology is the first step in developing a new drug, and SBP, through its infrastructure of its world-renowned Prebys Center, are the ones to do it, and we were the only ones to come forward to CIRM to offer it. We simply please want your permission to submit a revised application showing we can bring this cutting-edge technology to the California stem cell community, not only the experts, but also clinicians with clinical material and less experienced stem cell biologists. So our request, please, is simply to move us to Tier 2 so that we can submit a revised application.
No other hands raised.
No other comments from board members or from the public? Or amendments? Therefore, we're going to proceed to a vote.
Okay. Judy Chow? And the motion is to not fund tier 3.
Thank you, sorry, clarification.
So, Judy Chow?
Yes.
Thank you. Fred Fisher?
Yes.
Thank you. David Higgins?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
There's a problem with the sound.
Hard to hear.
We need to mute Evan.
Oh, got it.
Thank you. Adriana Padilla, I got you as a yes. Marv Southard? Marv? Marv,
You're on mute.
come back to you. Kevin Zhu?
Yes.
Marv? Marv, unmute. Motion carries.
It does?
Yeah, you and I.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. So we're now up to step 5. Raphael, do you want to clarify again at this point?
Yep, at this point, now that the tier 3s have been cleared out, the following board members can vote, speak, and make motions: Myskowski, Bernal, and Flowers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're at the point now where I'm going to ask if there's any application in tier 2, which is do not fund but resubmit, to elevate them to tier 1 to be funded. We see no hands. Okay. Now, is there any application in tier 1 that you would like to move to tier 2? Good. Okay. Then I will entertain a motion, which we require now, to close out tier 2. Once again, tier 2, do not fund, but go back for re-review.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you, and second by Fred Fisher. Thank you. Discussion by members of the committee. Okay. Are there any members of the general public who would like to comment on the motion, which is to close out tier 2? Do not fund immediately. Consider they will be sent back to the review group for re-review.
Yes.
We have a hand.
We have
Yes.
Dr. Sharon first.
Sure. Please introduce. Do you have a microphone or?
I can come up there or I can, sure. Okay. Right,
Come sit at the table.
sure. Should I?
Make sure.
Well,
Make
so
sure David
Kevin
can
is
hear,
over
by the way.
here, so
I'll stand back
no
here.
one-
Yeah,
no
okay,
one
all right,
stand
all
over
right.
here.
Come on up. My name is Arun Sharma, and I'm the Program Director for Application Infrastructure 6.2-15475, a shared resource laboratory for advanced stem cell-based modeling. I'm an assistant professor at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and I actually was a CIRM-funded trainee at the Stanford Stem Cell PhD program. I'd first like to thank CIRM for their support of stem cell training in California. I would not be a stem cell biologist without CIRM. Our proposal for a shared resource core facility, or CSSRL, aims to provide training in human organ chip and organoid technologies. Our proposal received a Tier 2 recommendation by the Grants Working Group, with 1 vote for Tier 1 and 13 votes for Tier 2. I request the opportunity to address the concerns raised regarding our application. One concern was the availability of training in systems that are not widely accessible. However, our training methods are applicable to any organ chip and organoid culture, with or without using systems from the organ chip company Emulate Incorporated, with whom we collaborate. Another concern was the adequacy of our organ chip equipment for the proposed training volume. We plan to have multiple Emulate automated systems at our CSSRL, each capable of holding 12 additional organ chips, accommodating up to 48 labs per year. We also have contingency plans with additional Emulate systems on the Cedars-Sinai campus to ensure support. Reviewers also raised concerns about day-to-day operations. At Cedars-Sinai, we have significant experience running core facilities. We have well-trained staff and ample booking sheets to meet user needs. We can utilize the resources of our adjacent biomanufacturing center if demand exceeds capacity. Reviewers also requested a clear explanation of our diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI plans. Our biomanufacturing center has over 1,000 diverse IPS lines available, and we are committed to promoting DEI by providing educational opportunities to underserved communities, as we have shown via our current CIRM-funded programs, CIRM Spark and CIRM Bridges. Finally, concerns were raised about my experience managing large projects. While I am a young investigator, I have experience in stem cell culture, organ chip workflows, and managing complex projects, such as a multi-million-dollar NASA award and award from American Heart Association. To further strengthen our proposal, Dr. Josh Brunig, who runs our imaging center, and Dr. Clive Svensson, our institute director, will provide advisory support for the CF SRL. In conclusion, Cedars-Sinai possesses expertise in organship and organoid culture and applications, education of underserved populations, as well as the derivation of diverse IPS lines. We have a proven track record of successfully executing CIRM education and infrastructure projects. I strongly urge the Application Review Subcommittee to consider approving our Infrastructure 6.2-5475 proposal for funding. Thank you.
We have another hand raised. Next on, Dr. Willard. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Dear members of the governing board, my name is Carl Willard, professor at UC San Diego, and I'm the PI in our Infrastructure 6.2 grant application, which was scored in Tier 2 and is currently not recommended for funding. I'm here today to voice support for staff recommendation that applications in Tier 2, including ours, be given the opportunity to revise and resubmit. We carefully reviewed the valuable comments made by the grants working group, and we feel strongly that we can readily address all concerns raised in the review and resubmit an application that will merit funding. Some brief background: our shared research lab, the Human Embryonic Stem Cell Core Facility at UC San Diego, has been continuously operational for nearly 2 decades. We started this core in 2005, first with institutional support, and subsequently we received critical funding from CIRM from 2007 to 2014. Throughout this time, our core has been fully operational, providing state-of-the-art technologies and resources essential to stem cell researchers at UC San Diego, as well as neighboring institutes and biotech industries. Importantly, we've achieved financial sustainability through fee-for-service and recharge mechanisms, as well as alternative funding sources. With support from this infrastructure grant, we will provide access locally and regionally to cell culture facilities and highly specialized technologies. We will also provide well-characterized stem cell lines, undifferentiated and differentiated into specific lineages, with a focus on neurons, blood, and cardiomyocytes, as well as 3D organoid systems. We stand ready to tailor our aims and goals to offer cutting-edge stem cell-based modeling expertise for researchers in California. To be clear, we respectfully ask that you adopt the staff recommendation. Please give us the opportunity to resubmit. Thank you for your time and valuable service to the stem cell community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Willard. Next up, Dr. Bornias Bardiatas. I'm so sorry, Nicole, for butchering your name.
No, you're quite okay. You did just fine. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Bornias Bardiatas, and I'm a professor of biology at Cal State University, San Bernardino. I have served as the director of the CIRM Bridges program, and I'm also director of the CIRM Compass program. I'm here to give my enthusiastic support on behalf of UCR's application. The grant number is 6.115366 and asks that it be moved to immediate funding. Cal State San Bernardino and UCR have had a long-standing relationship of mutual support as a result of our Bridges grant and also our CIRM Compass grant. Our students have benefited greatly, both by the training provided by the stem cell core at UCR, which has served for a long time without any updates. And so this grant obviously would serve that role. And we have had many of our students placed in stem cell labs at UCR. And all of our students have been trained in the techniques course provided by UCR. This infrastructure grant will provide a critical need in the underserved area of the Inland Empire. The GWG score is obviously outstanding. It gathered the highest rating. And so obviously the FWG score is in category 2. Our institution and 7 other similar institutions would benefit substantially by the funding of the grant, which has the intent to serve underserved patients and communities and disadvantaged students. We know what substantial benefits our grants have provided to our students, and funding this infrastructure grant will establish the only stem cell core in the Inland Empire region, a region which is bigger than some of the states geographically. It is bound to result in substantial benefit to our region's researchers, our educators, trainees and students, and further support training and retention of our stem cell community. Thank you for your time. We would very much be able to use the facilities of UCR when that takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vardiavasis.
Okay, next we have Dr. Bagdasarian. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Isabella Bagdasarian, and I'd like to thank the members of the committee for allowing me to speak today. I am here to urge you to consider funding the establishment of the Shared Research and Training Facility at University of California, Riverside. I'm a bioengineering PhD candidate at UC Riverside, and I'm fortunate enough to be funded through the CIRM Scholars Program for graduate students. With this funding, I've been working towards engineering a three-dimensional vascularized skeletal muscle model from human pluripotent stem cells. My research in the organoid field has provided me with an appreciation for how involved developing 3D stem cell-based models can be. Techniques that may be simple in 2D culture, such as immunofluorescence and image analysis, present new and unique challenges in complex engineered tissues. The establishment of the Bioform Core at UC Riverside will help to alleviate these challenges while training the next generation of scientists and engineers. The Bioform Core would bring crucial instrumentation like bioprinting to the UC Riverside campus and Inland Empire as a whole. Currently, the nearest bioprinter is 60 miles away through Southern California traffic. This is a major barrier to UC Riverside and the 5 other Inland Empire universities who rely on the stem cell core here. The Inland Empire is geographically isolated and historically underserved, both economically and medically. Rapid establishment of the Bioform Core is critical if we wish to empower disadvantaged students and researchers in the Inland Empire. In the context of my research, gaining access to a tool like a bioprinter would greatly accelerate the completion of my dissertation work, and in turn, I would be able to focus on developing methods to scale up the engineering of these complex muscle tissues for future regenerative medicine therapies. As a lifelong resident of the Inland Empire, I have witnessed the university here expand and innovate in a number of areas. Most importantly, though, the stem cell core has remained an essential resource in recruiting and training scientists from historically underserved communities. The Bioform Core will expand on this progress by providing a diverse group of researchers from the economically depressed Inland Empire region the platforms necessary for advanced 3D organ engineering. I've been fortunate enough to work with local students from the Inland Empire, ranging from the CIRM Sparks program through CIRM Bridges, and I've observed firsthand that they often do not have robust and consistent access to the training or instrumentation needed for 3D culture models back at their home campuses. Expediting the formation of the Bioform Core is vital to empowering this diverse group of researchers moving forward. The Bioform Core training program addresses a critically unmet need for the Inland Empire, ultimately reducing barriers to entry for scientists at every education level who wish to develop 3D models of organoids, tissues, and organs. I implore you to consider funding the Bioform Core and help to establish the Inland Empire as one of scientific and medical innovation. Once again, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Your time is up. Next.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next, Dr. Manley.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Dr. Jennifer Manilai, and I'm a professor at the University of California, Merced. Today, I represent our principal investigator, Dr. Kara McCloskey, co-PIs Dr. Changking Lee, and technical director, Dr. David Gravano, on application 6.115413. We were excited to receive unanimous scores of 1s and a recommendation for funding by the facilities working group. We appreciate the opportunity to address some of the grant working group's comments in an effort to secure this funding. The grants working group felt our proposal's overall value proposition may not address critical needs of California researchers in geographic areas where access to stem cell models are limited. In response, We respectfully note that the Central Valley of California, where UC Merced is located, is indeed a geographic area where stem cell models are limited. A shared resource laboratory in Merced would be highly impactful in the region and support current and future stem cell researchers for years to come. At UC Merced, we have been committed to developing experimental models and shared resource labs to support stem cell research and training programs since 2005. Our proposal is an extension of this commitment. We envision that this facility will be utilized by researchers within the Central Valley, ranging from Sacramento to Bakersfield, and other regions where local facilities may be impacted. The grants working group also noted the proposal could be improved by limiting cell types to those with the greatest benefit to local researchers who lack access to stem cell models. Our scientific proposal focused on human cardiovascular models, as that is our campus's area of strength. However, we also proposed to generate novel human iPS lines from a wide range of ancestries by inviting people of all races, ethnicities, and genders represented in the Merced community. These diverse iPSCs will fill a severe gap, an unmet need in stem cell research models that are reflective of the demographics of the California population. Building from this, we can improve our proposed comprehensive stem cell course to include characterization of the novel diverse iPS lines. This would be a unique aspect of our course, serving not only to educate, but also to add important scientific data on these cell lines to the public. We already have experience offering stem cell culture courses to UC Merced researchers and trainees, and have designed them to not interfere with the shared resource lab services. Rather, we have found that training courses utilizing SRLs promote effective and...
We are at time.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry. Next.
Thank you, Professor Manolay.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Alalam.
Yes. Hello. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, board members, CIRM staff, colleagues, and members of the public. My name is Denise Alalam, and I'm an investigator at the Lundquist Institute at Harbor UCLA Medical Center in Torrance. And I'm the PI on the Infrastructure 6.1.15.363 Stem Cell-Based Partnership Resource for Investigating Human Diseases and Training. I would first like to extend our gratitude to the board member and the CIRM staff for all the work they do for us, for the people of California, and for giving us the opportunity today to make this statement and defend our application. So I would like to emphasize our enthusiasm for this project that is truly a true partnership between the Lundquist Institute and local colleges around us, including Charles Drew College, Cal State Dominguez Hills, and Cal State LA. This partnership will provide access to stem cell modeling and training in a geographic area of the South LA and South Bay, where this would truly be one of a kind. It would be the first stem cell core in this area. This area is historically underserved and economically disadvantaged area, geographic area. So therefore, we feel that this project fulfills the goal of the Infrastructure 6.1, which is to ensure broad access to stem cell-based models in geographic area where access is limited. The grants working group was very enthusiastic about our project and gave it a score of 1. However, the facilities working group gave our proposal score of 2 and had some issues that we feel are addressable and we can address. The major issues were space issues, cost associated with the remodel, and there was a mention of DEI. Just to briefly address those 3 issues, we have identified additional space that has been completely remodeled in 2023 in October and is compliant with all California laws that will allow us to expand our training courses, but also to place our equipment properly as requested by the facilities working group. The second point relates to cost. We have been working with ZGF architects and engineers now, industry leaders in biomedical and research building design, to address the design and cost issue. I wanted to note that we kept our costs very low on remodeling because the Lundquist Institute is committed to the success of this project and therefore are willing to put in the soft money to do the remodel and to cover any expenses that are related to the remodel. The last point is DEI. We actually extensively addressed DEI in our scientific proposal as pointed out by the grants working group.
I'm so sorry, we are at time.
Dr. Al-Alam, thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Dr. Hausler.
Hello. Yes, I'm David Hausler. I'm the director of the UC Santa Cruz Genomics Institute, home of the UCSC Genome Browser, which is widely used. We have a long history of creating resources that are very valuable to the biomedical community. I'd like to point out that our application is quite different. It's very complementary to all of the other proposals. We are proposing a scheme in which we could educate students in stem cell work by letting them actually experience a scientific experiment with human embryonic stem cells just using their cell phone. So what we have is a feeder program that excites students about science, lets them actually do an experiment, and then gets them prepared for a subsequent experience where they are in person doing a lab. Now, you have to face it, we cannot have a BSL-2 lab at every community college and every state college. There is not budget to build that. So if a student wants hands-on experience with human embryonic stem cells or any of the iPS cells or derivatives, they would need to be chosen to have a special privilege to go to one of a few facilities that will actually be built with that. We have a facility here at Santa Cruz, and we have been asking for support for engaging in an expansion of that to offer these things. This platform has been developed by Dr. Mostahu Raji, who has 10 years of experience now using it in educating students, not only in California, but all over the world. And I've seen their face light up when they do their first experiment on this. It is a virtual reality experience where the actual experiment is being conducted in our BSL-2 lab, but it's being driven by the student themselves. The students work hard, they design the experiment, they execute the experiment, they analyze the data, which is another very, very important experience for them. And after that, they experience firsthand the excitement of doing a scientific experiment with actual human stem cells. I would like to request consideration of funding for this.
I'm sorry, Dr. Hausler, we are at time.
Professor Hausler, thank you. We've got your comments. Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Liu.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of UC Riverside. I'm Professor of Bioengineering, the Stem Cell Center, and the Material Science Engineering Program. I'm also the director of the CIRM Spark and Complex Training Program at UCR. I'm also co-director of the CIRM Scholars Training Program at UCR. So first, sincerely appreciate CIRM board members and this opportunity to speak to the public regarding Infrastructure 6.1, 15366 proposal, shared research and training facility for biofabrication of organs for regenerative medicine in the underserved areas. So the bioform facility is essential for equity access to stem cell resources in the Inland Empire region of the South California. The facility has been designed to balance training in stem cell biology and bioengineering that is at the forefront of stem cell research. As the only stem cell research infrastructure located in the socioeconomically, educationally, and medically underserved Inland Empire region, BioForum is a critical resource for the region with limited access to stem cell-based models, facilities, and therapies, as demonstrated with a wide range of stakeholders, represented in our 63 support letters in the regional submission. Building on the UC Riverside's current stem cell core, BioForum will be the first stem cell modeling facility for the underserved communities in the Inland Empire region and also adjacent regions. So the grant working group, we sincerely appreciate they understand the scientific value of our proposal and ranked it in the tier 1 with the highest voting number for the tier 1. The facility groups raised several concerns with the facility portion of our proposal, and we understand the issues and have addressed those issues clearly in our public comment letter in response to the concerns about sustainability and spatial integration, as well as the planning and timeline and the construction of our BioForum facility. So all the details outlined in our letters. So consider time, I will only briefly emphasize a few key points. Regarding the sustainability, BioForum will be established on the success of UCR's original stem cell core, which we have maintained operational since its completion in 2009 and even after the end of initial CIRM funding, with UCR's leadership support and the resources will remain operational.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Liu, we are at time.
Yes, Dr. Liu, thank you. We have a few more members of the public still with their hands raised, just one or two more. Who's next?
Dr. Mustafa Raji.
Thank you very much. My name is Mohammed Mustafa Raji, and I'm together with Dr. Hassler, I'm a co-program director at the grant Infrastructure 6.1 15478, the Life Cell Biotechnology Discovery Lab, which we request to be moved to tier 1. I want to start by saying that both the mandates of Proposition 14 as well as this RFA is to bring equity for stem cell modeling and education throughout the state of California. Now, let's face it, the majority of underrepresented students are in small universities and community colleges. It is, as Dr. Hassler mentioned, economically unfeasible to establish SRLs in every university and community college throughout the state. Cloud technologies can bridge this gap, and in fact, in RFA, cloud technologies were encouraged to apply, and demonstrating the interest from CIRM to actually deploy some of this technology in the educational setting. What we propose in our SRL is to generate 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional stem cell-derived models, including neurons, and connect them via the cloud and different equipment such as microscopy, electrophysiology, and fluidics control to enable students from all around the state to control experiments remotely. Furthermore, we will leverage our strong background and expertise in creating project-based education, a form of education that has been proven to work with students from underrepresented backgrounds. Finally, we have proposed to create a repository in both English and Spanish to enable other schools as well as members of the general public to reuse the material. I want to mention that the reviewers ranked highly our value proposition for the state of California. They said our program was feasible and it upholds the principles of diversity. However, they were concerned in 2 major points. One, our reach to other community colleges beyond the ones that we have already proposed in the original submission. I want to mention we had over 3 dozen of faculty from community colleges supporting our application, including faculty at Bakersfield College, the largest Hispanic serving institution in one of the largest, Hispanic serving institutions in the region. Additional commitments have been ensured over the past month from some of our already partners, and both here as well as somewhere else. As well as our universities, sorry. I also want to say that reviewers are concerned for additional funding beyond the length of this grant. We have already addressed this in 2 different ways. One, by already applying with the community colleges and leveraging the infrastructure at UCSC to bring in additional grants that can pay for these SRL beyond the 5 years, as well as getting commitments from research faculty both at UCSC and beyond to all.
I'm sorry, Dr. Mustafarachi, we are at time. Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you, Professor. We have one more speaker, I think, Ms. Lauren Linton.
Yes.
What's your title,
Thank
ma'am?
you. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Lauren Linton. I'm the Executive Director of the Genomics Institute at University of Santa Cruz, California, Santa Cruz. I'm here today on behalf of this proposal, 15478, but also mainly to give you a sense of the institutional commitment. UC Santa Cruz is one of 3 R1 Hispanic, Asian American, and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions in California, and one of only 20 nationwide. We have a firm commitment, long tradition of offering rich content, robust on-ramps to minoritized groups and communities. To the Genomics Institute, the term underserved community is core to our research purpose and mission. We also have a long tradition and rich history of working with these communities, shaping our work around their needs. This inclusion in and access to genomic data, to developing socially just policies and frameworks for that data, to decades of commitment of open share policies. The GI has been at the forefront of driving inclusion in education and in research. We currently offer several grant and foundation funded and highly impactful on-ramp programs to minoritized students as they enter the genomics and bioinformatics fields. Within the Genomics Institute, the Live Cell Biotechnology Discovery Lab builds on this Genomic Institute history to bring access to stem cell models, stem cell research to these student populations. UCSC has long been deeply committed to making our work, this work, a success. And over the years, it has provided research infrastructure, developed lab space, supplied administrative and research support to both the Institute and the Live Cell Biotechnology Discovery Lab. This continues with their match of commitment of $10 to $14 million investment to match the commitment of CIRM in developing this laboratory space and program. This is exceptional, if not unparalleled, level of commitment and desire to work with CIRM to make stem cell models accessible throughout the state, especially underserved communities. This dollar amount is huge for UC Santa Cruz, and for me, it's heartening to see the university prioritize programs such as these and truly walk the talk. When it comes to providing project-based learning, research, experiential training to underprivileged students of Latinx background, we are proud to talk to you today and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Director Linton. I don't see any other comments. Allow the chair to just to make a remark or two. First of all, I want to thank all the speakers from the public for their eloquence and the care with which they put into their remarks. You know, all of your remarks are recorded and will in fact go to the grants review group because all of the applications we've been talking about now in Tier 2 are going back for re-review and will in fact come back to the board for reconsideration, if you will. So your comments are very, very much appreciated. With respect to the 3-minute limit, you see the care with which the board is concerned with fairness even within the board with our conflicts of interest. So do not misinterpret the 3-minute limit. We impose it only for fairness sake, not out of any sign of disrespect for your remarks. Having said that, we have a motion on the table to, let me remind myself, close out Tier 2, which is not to fund now, but to go back to grants review for reconsideration. Are there any further comments from the board? Claudette, do you see any hands? No, we don't see any hands. I think that means, Rafael?
Oh, Adriana, just raised her hand.
Adriana, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
I did, thank you. What is the time frame for the re-review proposals?
Gil, can you answer that?
Yeah, so we're planning to do this three to 4 months out from now, and And so in most cases, they're only just one of the working groups, but we still have to put both working groups together. So we're looking at three to 4 months.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gil. Any other board members have any final questions or comments? I'm going to ask our legal counsel, Rafael Aguirre-Sacasa, to call the roll.
Okay, and again, voting to close out tier 2s and send to review. Judy Chow.
Yes.
Thank you. Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes. Yes.
Rita Ungasani? Yes. Rich Lahara?
Yes.
Thank you. Chris Mayaskowski.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla?
Yes.
Joe Panetta?
Yes.
Marv Southern? Yes. And Kevin Zhu.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I was looking ahead. We now come to the final section of this. I would entertain a motion to fund all the applications in Tier 1.
Southern moves.
Marvin Southern moves that we do. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Open to comments and questions from board members. Okay. Any members from the general public want to comment on this motion?
There are no hands raised.
No hands are raised. Raphael, we may proceed with the final vote on this section.
Okay, thank you. And the motion is to fund Tier 1 applications. Judy Chow.
Yes, approve.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Yes. Sarah.
Yes.
Thank you. Chris Mayaskowski.
Yes.
Thank you. Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southern. Marv? Welcome back.
Yes.
Thank you. Kevin Zhu.
Yes.
Thank you all. Motion carries. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Raphael. We're going to move on now. Let me know if there's a break that's required. We're going to move on to agenda item 9. Also will be led by a member of Grants Review. I think Haley Lamb, Dr. Lamb is going to take us through a consideration of applications for the clinical projects.
Hello, thank you. Give me a moment to share my screen. Is that visible to folks?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I'm presenting on behalf of Gil Zambrano, the clinical program grants working group recommendations. As always, we begin with our mission statement, accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. The fiscal year clinical budget status is as follows. The allocation was $252 million. The amount that has been approved up to today, so thus far, is over $105 million. And on the table for discussion is $56.5 million. That would leave just under $90 million remaining if all awards today are approved. The scientific scoring system for the clinical program is very similar to the shared labs program that you just discussed. Scores of 1, 2, and 3. A 1 is a recommendation for funding by the grants working group. A 2 is a do not fund at this time, but the applicant can resubmit. A score of 3 is a do not recommend for funding, and the applicant cannot resubmit the same project for at least 6 months. The criteria is scored that is leads into that scoring are these 5 key questions. Does the project hold the necessary significance and potential for impact? Is the rationale sound? Is the project well planned and designed? Is the project feasible? And does the project uphold principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion? For the clinical program, in addition to the scientific scoring, have the DEI scoring that is completed by the board members. And the scoring system for the DEI is a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being an outstanding response, a 6 to 8 responsive, a 3 to 5 not fully responsive, and 0 to 2 not responsive. We've included here sort of a visual of the rubric that can be found on our website that is used to evaluate the DEI scoring. The panel that reviews these applications for the clinical program is composed of 3 different groups of folks. The first at the top here is the up to 15 members of scientific grants working group, and they provide a scientific evaluation in the areas of disease, regulatory, manufacturing, and product development, and they provide a scientific score on all applications. We also have our grants working group board members. So these are the patient advocate and nurse members of the board that sit on the grants working group panels, and they evaluate the DEI and also provide a DEI score on all applications, as well as a suggested scientific score. And finally, we have non-voting scientific specialists that come on as ad hoc reviewers in areas of expertise that are not covered by the above folks. And they provide an initial score, but do not provide a final scientific score. So moving on to the applications today, the very first application is CLIN 2-14801. And so here I show the board members with conflicts of interest, Isabel Duran and Carol Watson. Going into the application, so the title is Stem Cell Derived IL-13R alpha 2 chimeric antigen receptor T cells for patients with melanoma and advanced solid tumors. The goal for this project is to complete a first-in-human clinical trial, and the applicant is asking for just over 10 million with no co-funding required for this. To go into a little bit of background, this application is aiming to target the solid tumors and melanoma in particular, which is a form of skin cancer. And the proposed therapy would target these solid tumors, and they aim to test the safety and efficacy first with the skin cancer melanoma. And this is a stem cell project, as it isn't composed of T memory stem cells and involves gene manipulation of those cells. In terms of CIRM portfolio projects, there are 2 other translational and clinical stage awards that target melanoma. Both of them are earlier stage. One is a Tran 1 and one is a CLIN 1. And the applicant team also has prior funding. They have mostly in brain cancers, and the 2 applications that are complete had all milestones completed and were achieved. And there is 1 award that is launching. So for the consideration of the board, the recommendation from the grants working group is to recommend funding. The DEI score was a 7, and the CIRM team recommendation concurs with the GWG recommendation for the award amount of 10.2 million.
Okay. Thank you, Haley. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept and move this forward.
So moved.
Marv Southard.
Thank you, Marv.
Thank you. Discussion on this application from board members. And if not, we will ask members of the public if they have any comments.
hands raised.
Okay, no hands are raised. Raphael?
Okay, this is to fund application 14801. Dan Bernal, Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Judy Chow,
Yes.
Leander Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. Anne Marie Juliege, Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Vito Fascioni, yes. Steve Julesgard.
Yes.
Thank you. Rich Love.
Yes.
Thank you. Chris Mayaskowski,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan, Adriana Padilla,
Yes.
Joe Panetta,
Yes.
Marv Southern,
Yes.
Kevin Zhu. No? Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Haley, you can continue with the next item.
Thank you. So the next application up for discussion is CLIN 1-14845. This is a neural stem cell delivered oncolytic viroimmunotherapy for ovarian cancer. And this is an IND enabling stage CLIN 1 application that is requesting 5.3 million with no funding, co-funding required. A little bit of background on this application. So this is ovarian cancer impacts about over 20,000 women each year, and the survival rate is only about half. And the proposed therapy, if it is successful, hopefully will provide a safer and more effective option for patients with this particular cancer. The current standard of care is aggressive chemotherapy, which has toxic side effects. And this is a stem cell or gene therapy project because the therapy itself involves neural stem cells. Similar CIRM portfolio projects include one CLIN 2 that impacts all solid tumors, including ovarian cancer. Prior funding to the applicant team includes prior awards for a TRAN1 and disease team. In the TRAN1 award is a direct progression event that has led to this application up for your consideration today. And that particular award was completed with obviously and is successful coming here as a CLIN 1. Why is my clicking not working? There we go. Oh, ooh, skipped. All right, so for your consideration today, the GWG recommended this application for funding with a unanimous Tier 1 scores and a DEI score of an 8, and the CIRM team concurs with the recommendations for the award amount of 5.3 million.
Thank you, Haley. Board will entertain a motion to accept the GWG recommendation.
So moved.
Our Southern seconds.
We have a motion and second. Comments from the board on this application? Okay, any member of the public want to comment on this application?
There are no hands raised.
No hands are raised. We're going to proceed to a vote. Thank you.
This is to fund application 14845. Maria Bonneville,
Yes.
Judy Chow,
Yes.
Leander Clark Harvey,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Fred Fisher,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Vito Bashani,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Rich Lahara,
Yes.
Chris Mayaskowski,
Yes.
Adriana Padilla,
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Thank you. Marv Southern,
Yes.
Carol Watson.
I think I'm in conflict.
Not on this one.
No, not on this
Not on
one.
this one, Carol.
Oh, okay, yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Sure.
Thank you, Raphael. Good. 14845 has been approved. We can move on to the third one, Haley.
Yes, thank you. The next application up for discussion is CLIN 1-15337, chimeric TGF beta signaling receptor enabled B7H3 CAR T cell therapy in children, and AYA with recurrent solid tumors. AYA meaning adolescents and young adults, just to be clear here. The goal of this application is to complete IND enabling activities and file that IND by the end of the award. And the funds requested are $6 million with no co-funding required. A little bit of background on this application. So this is also targeting solid tumors, but for children and young adults, and particularly is looking at metastatic sarcomas. And the overall survival rate for this particular cancer is very low. There's many complications from the standard chemo and radiation treatments. So the idea here is that the CAR T cell therapy could target these solid tumors and could potentially address some of the limitations that are that impact the effectiveness of the current standard of care. And this particular project is a gene therapy. The CIRM portfolio does not have any awards addressing metastatic sarcomas in children and young adults, and the applicant has not previously received a CIRM award. So for your consideration is a recommendation from the grants working group of scientific score of 1 from 11 votes and a score of 2 from 4, which is a recommendation for funding, a DEA score of 10, and the CIRM team concurs with the scientific recommendation for funding for the award amount of $6 million.
Thank you again, Haley. A motion to accept the EWD recommendation to fund.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a second from Fred and Maria. Thank you. Discussion from board members? Maria? Any comment from the public on this CAR T cell application? Do we see any, Claudette?
There are no hands raised.
No hands are raised. Let's proceed to a vote. You're first.
Okay, voting to fund application 15337, Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Thank you. Judy Chow.
Yes.
Deanna Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Vito Bashani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgar.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Chris Maskowski.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southern.
Yes.
And Carol Watson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Haley, application number 4.
Hi. Sorry, I was having issues with my clicking here. All right. Next application has a bunch of conflicts. So if you hear your name, please do not vote on the following application: Dan Bernal, Isabel Duron, Elena Flowers, Chris Miakowski, and Carol Watson. The application for discussion is CLIN 2-15547, phase 1/2A dose escalation study of autologous neural replacement in sporadic Parkinson's disease. And the goal for this application is to complete a first-in-human clinical trial. And the applicant is requesting $8 million and has the required 30% co-funding of over $3.6 million. A little bit of background on this application. So this is focused on Parkinson's disease, which is a progressive neurodegenerative disease affecting almost 1 million Americans. And it is caused by dopamine neural cell death in certain regions of the brain. There's currently no cure, and the current standard of care just controls symptoms. And there's also deep brain stimulation surgery that can also control symptoms. The proposed therapy has the potential to replace those lost dopaminergic neurons and hopefully increase and improve disease outcomes. And the therapy is derived from induced pluripotent stem cells. There are several CIRM portfolio projects that are similar, addressing Parkinson's disease. Two of them are earlier stage, TRAN1 and CLIN1. And there is one other clinical trial that is CIRM funded for Parkinson's, but the approach is very different. It's a gene therapy. The applicant team has prior CIRM funding for a DISC-2 early discovery stage project that was also related to Parkinson's disease. And it was completed successfully. So for your consideration, the grants working group has recommended this application for funding with a unanimous Tier 1 score. The DEI score was 8, and the CIRM team concurs with the scientific recommendation for the award amount requested at $8 million.
Thank you, Haley. The board would like to entertain a motion to accept the recommendation on this Parkinson's-related application.
So moved.
Second, Marv Southern.
Right, we have a motion from Higgins.
Okay, thank you.
And Marv seconded. Thank you. Comments from the board? Okay, comments from the public? I think we can proceed again, Raphael.
Thank you. And the motion is to fund application 15547. Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Judy Chow.
Yes.
Leandra Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Vito Bashani. Yes. Steve Tilsbury.
Yes.
Grace Lahara.
Yes.
And Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southern.
Yes.
That's it. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to proceed to the fifth of how many applications? 5th of 7 applications is next. Haley, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can I ask anybody who's not speaking to mute? I think the line is a little bit wonky. Thank you. So the next application, there's a couple of conflicts. So if you need to hear your name, Dan Bernal, Isabel Duron, Elena Flowers, and Chris Miaskowski, please do not vote on the following application. This next application is CLIN2 15562, phase 1 study of autologous e-sync T cells in adult participants with EGFR V3 glioblastoma. And the goal for this application is to complete a first-in-human trial. And the funds requested are just under 11 million with the co-funding of 300,000 with none required. A little bit about this application. So glioblastoma is a common brain tumor in adults and has a very poor survival rate. And the current standard of care involves surgery to remove the tumor and followed by radiation and chemo. And the survival is still poor based on these current treatments. The proposed therapy aims to improve the survival and quality of life for the patients with glioblastoma via CAR T cell approach that would ideally require a one-time treatment. And the therapy is relevant to CIRM as a gene manipulation of autologous T cells. In terms of CIRM, similar CIRM portfolio projects, CIRM has funded quite a few phase 1 clinical trials in various forms of brain cancer. And all of these approaches are also autologous CAR T approaches. However, they are each of them, as indicated here in the mechanism of action on the right, targeting different, they have different targets for each of the CAR Ts. And so this would be an additional CAR T approach that would target the EGFR instead of these other certain portfolio ones that have the different targets indicated here. In terms of prior funding from CIRM to the applicant team, they've received a translational award and a discovery award, both in the same disease area, and completed them. And for your consideration is a recommendation from the grants working group with a unanimous recommendation for funding and a DEI score of 8, with the CIRM team concurring with the recommendation for the award amount of just under 11 million, 10.9 million. Thank you.
Haley. So a motion from the board to accept the recommendation from GWG.
So moved.
Fred moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Southern second.
Okay. Thank you. Comments from the board on this application? And from the general public?
There are no hands raised.
There are no hands raised. We may proceed to a vote.
Okay, and this is to fund application 15562. Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Judy Chow.
Yes.
Leandra Clark-Harvey.
Yes.
Mark Fisher-Colbury.
Yes.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Thank you. Vito Bashani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
And Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southard.
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on to application number 6. Haley.
Thank you. So the conflicts of interest for this following application are Dan Bernal, Isabel Duron, Elena Flowers, Chris Miaskowski, and Carol Watson. The application for your consideration is CLIN 2 16063, a phase 1-2 study to evaluate a bispecific CD19, CD20 directed CAR T cell in refractory lupus nephritis and systemic lupus erythematosus. And this is the goal for this application is to complete a first-in-human clinical trial, and the funds requested are at exactly 8 million, with co-funding of over 10 million, with a 30% required. A little bit of background on this application. So lupus is an autoimmune disease that affects multiple organs and causes widespread inflammation that can lead to organ damage and eventually death. And lupus particularly is prevalent among African American and Hispanic women. Standard of care currently is largely symptomatic and involves immunosuppression, including corticosteroids. So the proposed therapy would essentially try to dampen down the autoimmune response, and it uses CAR Ts to do that. And the therapy itself involves the genetic manipulation of the cells to create the CAR Ts, which is how it's relevant to CIRM. The current CIRM portfolio does not include any TRAN or CLIN awards addressing lupus, and the applicant has also not received any prior CIRM funding. So the grants working group recommendation to the board is a recommendation for funding, with the scores split as follows. The tier 1, there were 9 votes in tier 1, 2 votes in tier 2, and 1 vote in tier 3, with an overall recommendation for funding. The DEI score was 9, and the CIRM team recommendation concurs with the scientific recommendation for the requested award amount of 8 million. Thank you.
Haley, Chair will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation.
So moved.
Bonneville
And
moved.
Marv.
And Marvin seconds. Thank you. Comments from the board on this lupus-related application? Steve Julesgaard.
Yes, Dr. Lam, I'd like to address the application we're about to review after this one, since it's also aimed at systemic lupus erythematosus. It's also addressing the CD19 receptor on B cells. Can you help me distinguish between these two applications, please? Or are we basically trying to address the same problem in the same way by funding two very, very, very similar applications?
Yes, so there's 2 answers to that. The first is that the current application under discussion, 16063, is an autologous approach that has 2 targets. So it's a bispecific, CD19, CD20. And the other application for consideration, I'm not sure if I can address this, but it's a 16303. So that application is an allogeneic approach.
Well, yeah, so the reason I raise this is because we're going to have a discussion subsequently about, remaining funds and our ability to use those funds to fund future applications. And the moment that something like that comes up, then for me at least, I sort of look at what we're doing currently and saying, well, are we spending our money wisely? And in the world of industry, you probably wouldn't be funding two projects that overlap, as much as these do too. I understand there are two different cell types that are being used, but ultimately the idea is if you deplete the CD19 receptor on B cells, or you attack the B cells with CD19 on them, that you will have an effect on systemic lupus erythematosus or lupus nephritis. And so I just really wonder if about the wisdom of spending this amount of money on two separate projects that are doing very, very similar things.
Yeah, so I guess I could just say that programmatic decisions is up to the ARS. But in terms of the recommendation from the grants working group, from the scientific reviewers, they were both recommended. There was some discussion in the panel on this as well, and they agreed that for this particular application, 16063, overall, that this bispecific approach has not been tried yet in humans and was worth seeing if it has a greater impact.
Haley, I would also add that the two approaches are a bit different, particularly since the other one, which uses iPSCs and is intended to be allogeneic, is sort of an off-the-shelf approach. And that typically has not been done with CAR Ts. That is a very different way of doing it. And so it means that the treatment for the patients would also be significantly different, since they wouldn't be in that scenario taking autologous cells in order to create the product. So there are some significant differences in the two, even though they are addressing largely the same disease. And in both cases, they are both addressing the B cell component and trying to dampen the immune response to the B cells.
Fred?
Gil, could you just remind us, since we don't often see spreads like this where 25% of the reviewers thought it should either come back or go away for good. Can you give us sort of the high level, what was the objection for the score of 3 and the scores of 2?
Sure. The score of 3 is from a reviewer who felt that the applicants really didn't distinguish adequately between their approach for developing this CAR T therapy for an autoimmune disease versus what is typically used for blood cancers, meaning they were taking an approach that was almost equivalent to blood cancers and not sufficiently taking into account the fact that this is a very different disease and the same elements may not apply. So, for example, one of the concerns was, why is it necessary in this case to include CD20 as well as CD19, because that is an issue that is largely impacted in blood cancers that may not be relevant to the autoimmune disease. So I think that was the perspective from that one reviewer. I think the other reviewers felt that the approach is novel enough that it is worth trying, testing. I think Haley, you may want to help me with the ones that scored a 2, but I think generally those that score a 2 are looking for additional information or data or clarification, but you may have more on that.
I don't really have much more to add.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
We're still on comments from board members at this point. Any other board member want to respond to the general discussion or to Mr. Julesgaard's specific comment? Okay, if not, I'm going to open it up to comment from the public, but can I just remind you that the comments have to be restricted to CLIN 2 16063.
3 minutes.
At this point, thank you. Who's next?
So Liz Moroso, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Liz. It's really nice to meet everybody. I am actually a licensed clinical social worker that primarily works with the oncology and rheumatology population. So I'm very familiar with CAR-T in the oncology community. But I was also diagnosed with lupus at age 16, and talking with this group a little bit about what this would look like. Also given my experience specifically with lupus nephritis and general SLE, I got really excited, as what was initially presented. Immunosuppression really has been the only thing that has kept my disease at bay. However, the side effects of that are so exhausting, and often I'm taking medications to help with those side effects. And so, we're talking with the Impact team, it just seemed like such a relief and such an incredible change to the usual narrative that I hear around my care, and also in the populations that I work with professionally in my clinical practice, and also at UCLA, where I was a practitioner, and CHLA, also worked with oncology and rheumatology patients. So I just wanted to offer that patient-focused voice, but also be an advocate for the patients and clients and families that I work with professionally. So thank you so much for allowing me to offer that perspective. And I'm happy to speak to the patient side of this as well, if that would be helpful.
So I appreciate your comments. We have another member of the Jonathan Benjamin. Mr. Benjamin.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me to speak and to address some of the comments. I represent Impact Bio, and I'm a principal investigator on this grant. I did want to say that in terms of the CD19 and CD20 story, there is, I think, a very important aspect of lupus in particular is the heterogeneity of CD19 expression, particularly in patients with anti-double-stranded DNA antibodies, something that is reported in the literature and that we have also observed. That's of course among B cells. I also want to say that there's great proof of concept for this approach, as was published recently, in fact, yesterday in the New England Journal of Medicine, for using similar lymphodepletion and approaches, but we believe having CD20 targeting will add to the efficacy. Additionally, this CAR T cell has been tested in lymphoma at a UCLA study with outstanding safety, as well as durable efficacy. So I would like for the board members to keep that in consideration as they evaluate this grant.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Dr. Benjamin, thank you. I appreciate. Let's see. I see another hand from the public. Ms. Kathleen Arnson?
Yes, very good on the name. Good afternoon. I submit the following comments as the president and CEO of Lupus and Allied Diseases Association, a national patient-led organization, and as an individual who has lived with the debilitating effects of lupus since childhood, to urge you to support Impact Bio's application. As a longstanding patient advocate, I understand the critical need for pioneering treatments for LN and SLE. Lupus is highly individualized, extremely volatile, difficult to diagnose, potentially fatal, presently incurable, totally capricious, painfully limiting, life-altering, dream-stealing, career-ending, and financially, emotionally, and physically devastating. Lupus is a disease with limited treatment options, a profound unmet medical need. I struggle with 8 different autoimmune disorders and comorbid conditions and take 48 medications a day. I have a paralyzed GI tract, kidney disease, and am blind in my right eye. There are no one-size-fits-all products for people like me. I have endured decades of destruction and disfigurements from harmful treatments. Lupus cut me down in the prime of my life and has stolen precious time from me, as well as the ability to have a career, financial security, or to be a mother. Due to the heterogeneity of lupus, no two patients are alike. A drug that works in one person may not work in another. Physicians need an armamentarium of therapies to effectively treat us. We have been waiting for more effective and safer groundbreaking treatments, and in a perfect world, people like me would have one treatment instead of 48. We desperately need safer, more innovative treatments that reduce symptoms and improve daily functioning and quality of life. In closing, I passionately urge you to support Impact Bio's application and stand with people with lupus by helping to advance CAR T therapy. Your support could be a catalyst in advancing innovative lupus treatments, and we're thrilled with the prospects this holds for diseases of unmet need. You would put us one step closer to ensuring that the next generation of people with lupus is given the chance at a better quality of life and be able to pursue their goals and achieve their dreams. Thank you for the opportunity to provide our patient viewpoints and for recognizing the value of including people living with the disease in the process. I also submitted written comments.
Ms. Arnstein, thank you very much for your statement. I appreciate it. No more public comment. All right, thank you. So we've had board comment. Any other members of the board want to respond to anything or have any additional questions? If not, we're going to proceed to a vote.
Okay, the motion is to fund application 16063. Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Judy Chow.
Yes.
Deandra Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Vito Mbashiani.
Yeah.
Steve Jonesgard.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Kevin Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southern.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much, Raphael. And finally, Haley, our last recommendation from the GWG.
Thank you. First, a note on the conflicts for this particular application: Dan Bernal, Isabel Duron, Elena Flowers, and Chris Miaskowski. Oh, sorry. So the application for consideration, and we've made it to the last one, folks, is CLIN2 16303, phase 1 study of CAR T cells in participants with moderate to severe active systemic lupus erythematosus. So this is, the goal here is also for a first-in-human clinical trial, and the funds requested are just under 8 million with a co-funding of over 3.4 million with 30% required. I won't belabor the points in the background as we just discussed for the prior application on the clinical background. The value proposition for this particular application, as Gil already mentioned, is that a similar approach, but for an allogeneic off-the-shelf therapy derived from iPS cells. And again, the CIRM portfolio does not currently have any translational or clinical awards for lupus. And the applicant team has received prior CIRM funding for a cancer indication with 4 milestones proposed and completed on time. So the application before you has been recommended unanimously by the grants working group, and the DEI score for this application was 8, and the CIRM team recommendation concurs with the above for the requested award amount of 7.9 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation.
So moved.
Bonneville moves. Do I have a second?
6 seconds.
Marvin, thank you for your second. Thank you. The floor is open to comments from board members. Seeing none, I'll ask the public if they have any comments on this final application.
There are no hands raised.
There are no hands raised. Gil, I'm sorry, Raphael.
Thank you. The motion is to approve the funding of application 16303, Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Judy Chow.
Yes.
Leandra Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes.
Guido Bashani. Yes. Steve Julesberg.
Yes.
Grace Lahara.
Yes.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta.
Yes.
Marv Southard.
Yes.
Carol Watson.
Yes.
Thank you, Carol. Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, Haley, for steering us through these presentations. Appreciate it. We now move on to agenda item number 10, which is going to be a discussion of clinical program application processing. The discussion, we're fortunate to have not only our interim Vice President and CEO, Jonathan Thomas, but a former board chair. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, with no lack of respect to the Chair and the Vice Chair and Board Member Blumenthal, I will look towards the screen here so that I can be seen by members of the board on the call here. So I'm speaking to you today about an extraordinary circumstance that confronts CIRM really for the first time in its history, having to do with an inordinately high number of applications in CLIN, TRAN, and DISC that have come into the agency over the past several months and the issues created by that increase. A bit of historical context very quickly. As you recall, ever since the advent of CIRM 2.0, we have in the clinical side, which is where I want to primarily focus here, had monthly meetings of the GWG to consider applications submitted for its consideration. Historically, that body has reviewed 3 to 5 grants per GWG meeting, and that entity, as you know, consists of a set number of outside of California stem cell and gene therapy experts who evaluate the science, as well as members of the board, specifically patient advocates, who opine on the DEI elements of each application. With the normal 3 to 5 number that we usually have, meeting monthly is still a major time consideration for all members of the GWG and patient advocates. It came to our attention starting in November that we were getting a dramatic influx of applications. The process is typically applications come in at the end of the month. 2 months later, they go to GWG. Whatever is recommended for funding is then considered by the board the subsequent month. At the end of November, unlike the normal 3 to 5 applications, we received 20 clinical applications. Those went to the January GWG. At the end of December, we received 8 more. These are new applications. And then the next end of January, another 8. And these don't count the Tier 2 resubmissions that come in each month as well. So instead of the 3 to 5 per month, over those 3 months, we had a total of 36 new applications that came in. And this has placed a very major burden on our review team to handle this high volume. I should say parenthetically, similarly, the high volume of TRAN and DISC has its own issues, but those are to be discussed another day. The problem is particularly acute, not just for the scientific members, but for our are patient advocate members of the GWG who have full-time jobs, and when confronted with this extremely high volume of applications to review, it is a real problem. So the team here has discussed this in great detail and has proposed, given that burden, and by the way, parenthetically, given that there are significant budgetary repercussions of these very large volumes of grants that pertain to what we have left in our clinical research budget this remaining few months of the fiscal year. And oh, by the way, if what we're seeing now happens to be a new normal going forward, we'll have significant repercussions for budgetary considerations in future years as well. The team on reflection has recommended through the memo that was posted on the agenda that we not entertain grant applications for the next several months and reconsider where we are as of the June ICOC meeting to give the team time to catch up on where we are with all these large numbers of applications. And in addition, you may recall we spoke to the science subcommittee about the fact that these large numbers of applications and the budgetary repercussions require that we take a real look at where we want to spend our remaining funds going forward. And so we are in the process of putting together a proposal that will be taken to the science subcommittee and the board on the areas of focus that we believe are most warrant CIRM's attention going forward. And as of the June ICOC meeting, that process will be well along and will be able to help inform the discussion of what we propose at that time. So the plan is to not entertain new CLIN 1s or 2s through June. We will entertain all grants that are currently in the pipeline and any Tier 2 resubmissions on grants that receive that score that have been in the pipeline before as well. In addition, the one program we are proposing to keep on track, you'll recall you voted for the CLIN 4 concept plan, and we have proposals due on the CLIN 4s, which, as you will recall, are designed to provide funding for projects that are approaching BLA submission. And we instituted that program in the effort to help them get across the finish line. Those applications will be received on schedule in April. We'll go to the GWG in June and to the ICOC in July, which of course is the beginning of the next fiscal year. So all of those elements I just described are recounted in the memo. This does require board approval. This is a recommendation of the team. And as you're considering this, I would strongly urge on behalf of the team that we stick to our budgets that we've set forth, including this year. And while I understand this creates difficulties for certain labs to have this several month gap in the process, I nonetheless urge that we not entertain any exceptions to this, because if we do, that will set the table for many other requests to do the same and will really contravene the efforts that we are proposing here. So with that, I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, for discussion.
Thank you for your presentation, President Thomas. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify two things. One, this is a change to the concept plan, correct?
Yes.
Second,
so that's the motion that we need, is to change the concept plan.
Second, the effective date would be backdated to February 1st. I'm not sure that was clear, and I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that the request is that it is backdated to February 1st.
It's actually backdated to January 31st. So yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
you're comfortable with that clarification? Yes, great. Okay, so I think then we should start with entertaining a motion on the floor.
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Second?
Second.
Seconded.
We have a motion. Second. Raphael, do you think you can state that motion?
Yes, this is to amend the CLIN 1 and CLIN 2 concept plans to halt the monthly applications monthly acceptance of applications until further notice, as described by JT.
Okay, thank you for the clarification or for the statement. So the floor is open first to members of the board to comment on the amendment.
Pat Levitt?
Thank you. Dr. Levitt?
Yeah, just one or two clarifications. That the retroactive component of this, January 31st, does that mean that there are no applications that have been received during the month of February? That's a question. Have applications been received in the month of February? I can't hear you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, the reporter cannot hear.
We cannot hear sound in the room. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Now we can hear you. So I can't hear JT.
We didn't hear the answer to the question.
Applications that have been submitted in February. Did you hear me?
Yeah, what did you say? Say that again?
Yes, there are applications that have been submitted in February.
So the request is not to process those applications that have already been received in February. Is that correct?
That's a portion of the request.
That's a portion of the request. Okay. So that's one clarification. I guess the other clarification is well, I'll make a comment first. I see three components to this. One is logistics, right? That was described. That is the sheer number and how those are going to be processed in current state. The second is priorities. That is likely to be a future conversation. The third is budgets. And I just want to try to understand that. I know that we've had a historic rate of success. Is the implication that we want that's part of the rationale to maintain that historic level of success of applications in the 40 to 50% range, or are we in the situation, and maybe that's for more discussion, where you make a wish growing this area, and that means there are more investigators. That means there are going to be more applications, but there's a set amount of money. So the only way that's going to be dealt with, just like at NIH or other extramural funding agencies, is that the success rate goes down. It's not necessarily a goal to maintain success rates for applications at steady state, particularly when the budgets are set. So to me, that's a different issue. I'll just say it. I'll stop after this. I'm concerned about applications that have been submitted in good faith for February and are not going to be processed as this is being proposed. I'll stop there.
We can't hear you.
Sound is distorted.
Okay.
We're gonna.
Can you
Can you hear me
Somebody
now?
needs,
No.
try
You're
again,
back.
Marie.
You're good. We can hear you now.
Um,
And now there's a
Somebody's
echo.
cell phone in the room is not muted.
All right.
how about now? Okay.
That's better.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to make a comment about the proposal on the table. Entertaining individual exceptions and public comment about individual applications. If the desire is by the board to halt acceptance of applications starting February 29th, because there's a sensitivity to those who have already put an application in. That is, to deal with that is better to deal with it as an amendment to the concept plan. We cannot entertain comments and talk about individual exceptions because there have not been conflicts that have been screened for our board members in trying to decide if one application should move forward versus another. So I just wanted to make that clear. Because they are still in the system, we have not screened for conflicts for that. So we cannot address individual applications at this moment. If that is the desire, we could move forward with the policy and those things could be talked about in March. So we could either decide that February 1st is, or January 30th, 31st is the date, or February 29th is the date, but not on specific individual applications.
Maria? Further comments from board members? President Thomas? So,
this is Steve Julesgaard. I have a comment.
I have a comment also, Vito.
Yeah, as do I. And Vito, we can't hear you.
Oh, okay. So right now, President Thomas has the floor, and I see all your hands. Board members will be recognized shortly.
So, Pat, can you hear me?
Barely.
How's that? Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay. So a couple of comments. One is one of the things when you're talking about quality of applications, one of the things we're very concerned about is the quality of the reviews, and that the increased burden that this is placing on all the reviewers and patient advocates who are part of the review risks resulting in burnout amongst reviewers and could affect the quality of the reviews of each of the applications. So that's sort of part and parcel of one of the issues here. The second thing is, just so everybody knows, based on what we just approved in the last agenda item, we have 90 million left in our CLIN budget for this fiscal year, and the applications that are currently up for review that remain total 105 million. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen with respect to those in the GWG, but we're already in a precarious position with respect to running through the remaining CLIN budget that we have for this fiscal year, potentially well before the end of the fiscal year itself.
Who's that? Steve Julesgaard? Steve?
Yeah, okay. So this is basic. I'm going to just echo what Mr. Thomas just said. I think the biggest issue we've got is budget. And there is a significant likelihood when I do the total of the numbers, at least that I saw yesterday, that in the answers to questions posed by David Jensen, that we had a total of submissions. This is both new applications and resubmissions of 166 million, or close to 167 million, with an approved budget of 90 million. Okay, so assuming that we have a 60% approval rate out of that, we're already at 99.6 million versus the 90 million in the budget. So it doesn't, for me, make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time working on February applications if we just don't have the budget money. That's not a good use of anybody's time. So if we're going to consider February applications, let's do it if and when we know we have any money to be able to spend on them. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Kim Barrett?
Yes, I actually want to echo Pat's comments. I'm very troubled that investigators who in good faith have put the blood, sweat, and tears into writing proposals, to submitting them, to jumping through all the hoops that they need to get proposals out the door, that we then turn around and say, we're not even going to look at your proposals. I think that risks the credibility of the agency. And I cannot support any proposal that would be backdated to the end of January.
Judy?
Judy Gasson?
No, Judy Chow.
I'm sorry?
Judy Chow.
Oh, Judy Chow, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I actually support the proposal, but I just want to bring up a topic about given our budget will be always somewhat limited, and we should anticipate the number of applicants or particularly getting to the clinical phase should be increased. And I would suggest we start looking at maybe implementing some screening mechanism. So kind of like increase our efficiency in review and taking this opportunity to make up some method that will be much more sustainable down the line.
Thank you, Judy. I think Marvin Southern is next, followed by Fred Fisher.
I was wondering how many applications have been received from February so far?
Is
online. Gil?
Yeah, so we have 2 that were submitted before the deadline. It is unusual for us to receive submissions this early. They typically come really at the end of the month, but we have received 2 at this point.
Thank you, Gil. Marvin, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It seems to me that at least those 2 ought to be considered.
As Maria Bonneville mentioned, though, it's going to be difficult, if not illegal, for us to consider them because we haven't done the conflict of interest check on board members. Fred?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate support for the original proposal. It's not coming to us lightly. We understand the implications. You know, our sympathies can go out to those who are very proactive in getting their applications in, but submitting an application is no guarantee that it will be reviewed, and certainly no guarantee that it will be funded. And it's not as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not as if those applications will go into the trash can. At the point at which we are ready to restart the consideration of applications, those applications can be considered in due course with any others that are there. So I don't have any concerns whatsoever about us as a mature funding organization saying, hold on, we're at a new place and we need to make new considerations. And those considerations might provide some inconvenience to some, but in the interest of a mature organization running the way it needs to, we need to support this proposal. And somebody tell me if I'm wrong that those applications can be held for, and those applicants can be queried should the opportunity to request funding reopen. They can be asked if their applications want to be considered, or they can simply resubmit them at that time. A simple message that we are not accepting applications as of this date. Therefore, your application will be held until such time as we resume our process. That seems completely reasonable, given the nature of this organization and the work that needs to be done.
Thank you, Fred. We're going to hear next from Suzanne Sandmeyer, followed by Joe Panetta.
Thank you. So I'd like to echo some of the comments made by other members, starting with Pat Levitt. I feel that it's a rather unusual move for a funding agency such as ours to just suspend funding, and so I'm I'm wondering if we have considered mechanisms such as are used at NIH for triaging grants, recognizing the incredible stress that this increase in applications has put on staff and lay members of the review groups. So there could be 2 levels of review that would reduce the effort that has to be put in per grant, basically. Secondly, I think we have to consider changing the percent, the so-called success rate, meaning the funding rate here. And that might improve actually the quality of what we fund. So I'm not completely clear on why that can't be implemented immediately to allow grants in the pipeline to continue to compete, but be under a more competitive condition. I'm a little concerned about what happens in June if we open funding again. I think those grants and the programs that are in the pipeline, particularly for clinical operations, will continue to be there, and we could be facing a real tsunami of applications at that point. And I just want to conclude with a question for clarification. If we vote in favor of the January deadline, does that mean that we would have another vote in favor of accepting ones that are already in the pipeline for February? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sandmeyer. I think to partially answer your question at the end there, we're not able to, for the same reason that we spoke to before, because of conflict, but it probably will come about to that at some point. Joe Panetta is next, followed.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
Am I on, Vito?
All right, hold on one second.
Okay.
Joe.
Oh, Joe, sorry. So, Suzanne, thank you for your comments. I just wanted to assure you that the team is in the process of evaluating the process itself on matters such as those that you raise, and we will be getting back to the board with suggestions on how that process can be improved. Again, this is all assuming that this is sort of a new normal, which 3 months of data seems to indicate. And so we'll be getting back to you with that. But thank you very much for those suggestions.
Thank you, President Thomas. Joe Panetta, please.
Thank you, Vito. I find myself in an interesting position because running the Life Science Association here in California with so many members and research institutions and universities, I've heard from them already encouraging us not to stop this process. But I don't serve on this board as the CEO of Biocon California, and I've served on the board for a long time and as a member of the Grants Review Committee as well. And I think something that JT said is really of primary importance. You know, the one thing that I've seen over the years that we've been engaged in reviewing and approving applications is that we've had a high degree of confidence in the level of rigor and detail and science that's gone into those reviews by the staff and by the outside reviewers as well. I'm all for creating a competitive process and maybe even a more competitive process. I agree with some of what Suzanne said. But it's senseless, I think, to continue to accept applications and to cram them into the pipeline and to try to, in some way, create more efficiency to get through that process. To me, that just isn't a workable solution. So I support the proposal that JT made. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Before we go on to Monica, we have breaking news. I think, Gil, you want to change something?
Yeah, so we were just looking at what we have as of today in terms of submitted applications for February, and it's actually 5.
Thank you, Gil. We have 5 applications. Okay, Monica, followed by, it looks like Kim Barrett, and then Mark Fisher-Colby.
I really enjoyed the discussion. I can hear all the points. I'm serve as somebody in my roles very budget conscious, and I do think these are appropriate to consider measures. However, I am quite disturbed that we are backdating this without forenotice, and I think that is troublesome. I do agree that with all the things, especially most recently said by Dr. Sandmeyer, about increasing various triage, all the things. I think there's lots of mechanisms we could go that all of us who have been on study sections and various funding boards could be applied here. However, it is troublesome, I feel, about backdating this. If this proposal is voted on, it feels much more comfortable, say, as of today or forward progress, that this comes into effect. I won't reiterate everybody else's points, but I hear all these points and why we need to be making some changes. Thank you.
Monica, thank you. It's Kim. Yes, Kim Barrett.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out, I think, I can't even remember now who said this, maybe it was Fred, that this was an inconvenience, but it's much more than an inconvenience. And we have been focusing explicitly on translating discoveries into the clinical realm. So I can absolutely understand the burden of review, and I very much am of the opinion that we need to explore mechanisms in terms of the competitiveness of the process, the lack of granularity in the scoring system, et cetera, using other mechanisms to reduce the load on the reviewers. But as Monica just said, backdating this proposal is really a loss of trust and a loss of faith. And I'm hearing everything that everybody's saying, but I would rather see the proposals that have been submitted reviewed, even if they had to be held over for funding to the next fiscal year, than not reviewing them at all. Because when they come back, if they were asked to come back or they were held for review at some later date, there will be a pent-up demand of all the proposals that haven't been submitted. And so it will be a different competition, especially if we change the historical success rate than the one that they thought they were submitting to.
Thank you, Dr. Mark Fisher-Colbury.
Yeah, just a couple comments. First of all, a good chunk of this is in response to the fact that this is clearly a tsunami. This isn't just a condition of 2x increase in number of applications. In some areas, we're looking closer to 10x, if I'm not mistaken. So that is clearly a situation that will have a dramatic impact on the ability to carefully evaluate these proposals. So that causes a lot of risk. The second element here is there is no targeted success rate. That's a historical number. I just wanted to bring that out because I don't want anybody to have a misapprehension about that. That's just a tracking mechanism that was used to facilitate a potential future forward budget analysis about if, with the tsunami of applications, that historical rate is applied, then here are the dollars. So just a clarification, because I've heard a couple times that there seems to be an impression that we might be trying to target a certain success number. And to my knowledge, that's not at all what is involved in the process. And just wanted to make sure that was understood. So thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Fred Fisher's next.
Fred, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So I think it's completely unworkable to review applications that might in fact consume everything we have left for the fiscal year. I think it's also unworkable to review applications, have them scored under one paradigm and hold on to them, and then have a different paradigm for applications that came in. And too bad for those of you that weren't proactive in getting yours in. And now we've got sets of applications that fall under two different potential scoring and review rubrics. So we have a limited budget. We have tremendous awareness that is generating a historic number of proposals, and we need to change our process. And changing the process midstream is responsible. It's not offensive. It might be unpleasant. And certainly I've received plenty of letters from funding organizations that say, thanks for your great proposal. Unfortunately, we don't have the money to fund all the great applications that came in. So this is nothing new in the world of granting. And I would just reiterate that we need to be, as a board, we're here to be responsible stewards for the organization. We're not here to cater to the people who make applications. We're here to have a clear process that is one that is in alignment with the needs of the organization. And applicants will have to adapt to that. That's just the real world. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. And we followed by Dr. Levitt.
Yeah, so, the conversations have been mostly in present tense and future tense. And so the issue I raised is about past tense. And past tense is when things are applied retroactively. So what Fred just said, Fred, what you just said is what we all live with, those of us who submit grant applications, that there's just not enough money to fund things that might be considered to be fundable. So that's not the issue at all. I understand the logistics. I'm just disturbed about the conversations being present and future, and the proposal is to go back in time. That's the only issue that I have. But in terms of dealing with the logistics, I understand that, and a temporary solution to deal with what's in the pipeline now. And I consider a grant that's been submitted to be in the pipeline. What's in the pipeline now? So I'm okay with a declarative that this starts at noon, February 22nd. But I don't like to personalize things, but I've been submitting grants for 40 something years. And I often receive, as Fred, as you said, disappointing letters saying that it was a great proposal, but we just don't have enough funds. That's expected. What's not expected, and which has never happened, at least of anybody that I know or myself, is to have a grant submitted and not processed. And I don't think there's anything, and I don't know what the guidelines are or what the propositions define that grants have to be reviewed within a certain period of time, but there are mechanisms to be able to deal with present and future and not go back to past. And that's the one issue that I have problems with.
Well, if I could just respond quickly to Pat, I think we are dealing with a budget issue, because the reality is those 5 proposals could consume the entire budget for the remainder of the fiscal year. So one way or another, we are going to be changing our process. The question is, do we want to be out of money for the remainder of the fiscal year, or do we want to change the way we consider how we spend the money? Because one way or another, we're running out of money.
I think, Fred, the grants are reviewed. I don't have insight into future state about how any grant will do. The grants team makes recommendations to the board, and they prioritize grants. And so that's going to happen no matter how many there are. There are going to be priorities that are going to be set by the grants team that is going to come to the board, and the board will look at those grants and say, we agree or we disagree. That's the process that we work under. I don't know what's going to happen. All the grants may be terrible, or all the grants may be great, and then there are harder decisions to make. But the process is the process of recommendations set by the grants team, priorities that the organization has, and then presentations to the board, and then the board has to make sometimes very difficult decisions about what can be afforded within a fiscal year but it's a decision that I think we all agree we can do. And there'll be disappointed people who won't, scientists who won't get funded, but that happens throughout our lives as scientists, to be honest. But not processing something that already exists, to me, is a real challenge for me to swallow.
Thank you. We have a few more board members to speak. Judy, followed by Leandra. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't repeat what Pat said, but I agree with the rationale that those that have been submitted should be processed by the organization. And I'm also troubled by retroactively stopping processing of applications when we do have some that are already in the pipeline. Having said that, I just want to compliment JT and the staff and the leadership team for recognizing this issue and taking the bold step to say we have to stop and ask ourselves some very hard questions before we can go forward in terms of process priorities and those types of things. So thank you for aggressively managing this process right now. In some ways, I suppose we should have seen this coming, because for all of those 20 years when we were funding the basic research, the translational research, of course, our hope was that it would lead to clinical trials. And so now we will find a way to deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. I'm going to, we have two board members yet to speak. It's Leandra, and is going to be followed by Keith. But I do want to exercise the sort of prerogative of the chair to ask that we tailor this by the clock. We can't devote too many more minutes to this. We don't even have a motion yet on the table. Leandra?
Thank you so much. I'll be quick.
I think we do have a motion on the table. I think I made it.
That's right, Fred. We have the preliminary motion, and we don't have any amendments yet. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Leandra, where are you?
Sure, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So thank you. I'll be brief. So interestingly enough, during this meeting, I received an email on a couple of grants that I have applied for and are waiting to hear back about. And I got the note that said, we need some extra time. We're sorry. We know we're past the deadline. We'll get back to you. And I would say that that is actually a pretty routine thing that happens, unfortunately, when either an organization doesn't have the resources or the time resources or the person power. And so in this instance, I would rather, as unfortunate as it is, wait to do a thorough review when we have enough time and maybe extra funds. I'm not hearing, and maybe I have this incorrect, but I'm not hearing, oh, they're in the pipeline and now we're not going to fund them or they're going to have to reapply. What I'm hearing is it's a delay in review of those applications. And while delays are unfortunate, they are not unprecedented. And if it's in the best interest of the staff and the board members and whatnot, in terms of resources and time, why would we not make sure that we can do a thorough review at a later time period versus rush through? As an applicant, putting myself in the shoes of folks that apply, and again, I just got a message or two. I get it. It's disappointing. You're waiting on pins and needles. And if rushing it means that my application may have less of a chance because of less funding or timing or whatever, then I'll wait, right? So I'm just sharing that perspective. I have been one of the individuals that I've had to review a lot of applications this year just because of where we're at. And so I do think that it's responsible to wait and to, delay this until we're at a position where we can do this fully. Thank you.
Thank you, Leandra. Board Member Yamamoto.
Hi. First, let me apologize that I had to jump off of this meeting for a little while to take another call. So I may have missed the critical parts of the discussion, but I'll try to be quick as well to say that I really concur with what Pat and others have said about this trying to generate this retroactive action. I think that things that are in the pipeline really have to be processed. And JT may have mentioned this while I was out, but he and I, and I've also talked with Larry Goldstein about this, have talked about changes in our procedures that could increase the efficiency with which the grant reviews are done. There's several ways. Suzanne mentioned a few of them. Several approaches that can be taken. So for future action, I think we can increase the efficiency. But doing this retroactive decision not to review applications, I think is unfair, would be something that I at least have not experienced before. I mean, I hear, Leandra, what you're saying, but it's something that I and Pat and others have not experienced before. And I think it would be really viewed as really patently unfair for the investment of time and work that has gone into preparation of the applications. And in reality, deferring in this way would simply be putting off a worse tsunami when the mill is opened back up again. So I would say that I would concur with the points that Pat and others have raised, and just say that there are ways to increase the efficiency and maybe even the fairness of the review process going forward. Finally, there's nothing guaranteed by any agency, including CIRM, about a pay line. These things change. The agency has no control over how many applications come in, and that at the end of the day, as a function of the money that is available, is what determines the pay line. And no applicant is ever guaranteed a pay line or said that this is the way that this is the fraction of applications that we'll pay. So I don't think that's a problem coming in. I think what we need to do is increase the efficiency with which we process applications. That can be easily done, but it has to be done in the future, not in the past.
Well, thank you, Keith. Listen, I'm looking at the clock and I see that this scheduled meeting has only 2 minutes left. This is an item we absolutely must vote on. I'm going to ask if those board members please stay on a little while longer. I don't know how to, I guess we're going to open it up now to public comment. And I see there's an order on my screen. It looks like.
Just a reminder that we can only talk about the amendment to the concept plan, and we're not talking about specific applications.
Did everyone hear that?
Can you,
and again,
did everyone hear that point made by our legal counsel?
No.
That I'm going to open up now to public comment, but the comments have to be restricted not to individual applications, but to the amendment on the table to the concept plan, which is this flow control amendment. Dr. Jennifer Puck.
Yes, thank you for letting me share my thoughts. And in particular, I wanted to draw the attention of the board to the circumstances of applicants for second CLIN 2 awards. As you know, these are the ones that are really poised to get BLA soon. And so it seems to me that protecting the progress of these later stage projects might take priority over ones that have not yet begun, so that they don't face interruption. And furthermore, I would ask the board to look at the approval that was given last December to nonprofit settings where the second CLIN 2 would not have corporate co-funding. And in these cases, an academic partner would perhaps be the partner or setting for future BLA management. And this is a new avenue that turns out to be necessary for rare diseases and for diseases that affect underrepresented minority populations. So I would ask that maybe a blanket hold on all applications might not be the right approach, and considering the late stage ones the second CLIN 2s, and particularly the ones from nonprofit applicants be considered. Thank you.
Thank Dr. Park very much. The next speaker is Brian Cully.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Cully. I'm the CEO at Lineage Cell Therapeutics. I feel very comfortable speaking on behalf of many corporate entities when I say we deeply appreciate the hard work and the commitment of the CIRM review teams and the extensive associated resources which go into the consideration and funding of various applications. I believe we should all support a rigorous review process, and if process changes or lower approval rates reduces the review burden, I believe that's a benefit for the individuals as well as for the field with improved quality. I also wish to note that the public proposal to deal with the unprecedented influx of clinical grant applications explicitly stated that it's important to note that the action will not interfere with current submissions moving forward or any tier 2 resubmissions. I did not see a reference in that notice to backdating to January 31st or the additional points regarding conflict checks. We learned today that 5 applicants worked hard to submit their applications in good faith this month, possibly in some cases before this agenda item was made public, or in all cases, certainly before it was taken up by the board today. And so for this reason, we respectfully ask the board to consider the extensive work put into all such recent applications and to grandfather the continued review of all current submissions made before this meeting, which we believe would be consistent with our expectations in the public notice. And the main difference I wish to highlight between the existing and pending applications at this time is that the February applications have represented through their submissions that they're ready for review and prepared to begin work immediately. And so if they are funded, a delay to these already submitted applications is not just an inconvenience, but a measurable delay placed directly on patients in progress compared to the delay of future expected submissions, which have not indicated they're prepared to begin work at this time. Because if they were ready, presumably they would already have applied. So I respectfully submit, in agreement with Dr. Levitt and others, that rather than backdating or rather than selecting February 29th, which might validly invite door crashing of potentially lower quality or rushed applications, that if possible, today, February 22nd, is a date more suitable for this difficult situation and may help avoid the potential for decelerating the development of transformative regenerative medicine, which are otherwise ready to advance as demonstrated by their submission into the CIRM pipeline. Thank you so much for your attention and consideration of this input today.
Mr. Cully, thank you very much for your comments. They're going to be followed by Mr. Terry Pirovalakis. Hello.
Hi, board members. Thank you very much for your time. As you heard last month when I appealed our grant, we were rated a tier 3 and suggested to reapply. In that model, we're really hoping that instead of just allowing tier 2 applications during the pause period, that you also allow tier 3 applications during that pause period so that we are able to come back with our pivotal study application that we're planning to dose patients in August to reapply. I also want to make a comment that I'm very in tune with the rare disease community, and I can tell you that the tsunami that you're feeling right now is just an inkling of the beginning of the tsunami. The tsunami is going to be significantly bigger coming every month going forward because there is no funding models out there. This is the only funding model for pediatric rare diseases. So I just want to leave it at that very briefly. Please consider tier 3 applications as well. And thank you for what you do every day and for supporting individuals and academics and companies like ours. We do not have any other method, and we truly appreciate it. Thank you.
No, go.
May I go? Dr. Christman, Karen?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you. So I appreciate the board's, discussion. I think everyone gets the key points. I think the one thing I just wanted to add about the point about backdating and not being just so true to, say, delay an application for 5 months. So I won't talk about the details of my own application, but we'll say, timing for applications is often submit specific reasons. So, for example, we wanted to time our resubmission with manufacturing capabilities. So could have resubmitted in November, let CIRM know both in November and in January. that we intend to submit in February. So, just delaying it 5 months is not completely trivial. And I think, as others have said, we're used to not getting grants funded, but having it, something that's already submitted, not reviewed, I think is unprecedented. And, it makes it extra difficult to swallow the fact, updated in January, continued to work on that, pushing everything aside, for a month of intense grant activity, then to say, never mind, to not have a review is just, is difficult. Slowing down progression and timing those resubmissions is something that's really important. So delaying 5 months, isn't trivial. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chrisman. I appreciate that. Our last comment is coming from Evan Snyder.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for listening to me yet again. We understand the burden that the terrific CLIN1 programs have put on the overworked and excellent CIRM staff, but please, to abruptly put a hiatus on a program that so many scientists and patients have come to build programs around without a wind down period of at least 4 to 6 months, or at least an intermediate solution, for example, every other month deadlines, has the very real potential to cause irreparable harm. Now, my comments are personal, but they're representative for academics. We are academics, not a company, in the last stages of a very successful and promising CIRM translational program dealing with brain injury in babies, the runway to a CLIN1. Our program has succeeded famously despite the headwinds of the pandemic, hitting all our milestones, some of which have resulted in high-tier publications, a completed pre-IND meeting with the FDA. This program is supported entirely on a TRAN grant, which in conjunction—
And this is not about an individual application.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm talking general, I'm not talking about our particular application. I'm using this generically to say that we, and I promise I won't do that, but just as an example, that in conjunction with our CIRM program director, had a plan to transition to CLIN1 funding mechanisms with a February and likely March submission, with a plan that's been in place for about a year. Funding is likely because of the spectacular—
We have to keep it at the level of the concept plan. That's a little bit too long.
Okay, I will not talk about ours in particular, except to say that given that academics are entirely being funded on a TRAN mechanism, with the runway going to CLIN, layoffs will happen because we anticipated a smooth runway into CLIN. The team that brought us within striking distance of a clinical trial will be decimated and maybe not able to be
All right,
we got the point.
We understand, and unfortunately, that's a little bit too close to your application, so we have to move on. Thank you.
Oh, yes, we'll finish this up with a final comment from Jonathan Thomas.
So I hope everybody can hear me. I first of all appreciate all the comments about the backdating. I understand that sounds unusually draconian, but again, the reason for that is twofold. One is the strain issue, strain and bandwidth issues, but I want to go back to what Steve said a number of minutes ago, which is it's entirely possible when you factor in the 105 million in new applications in CLIN1 and CLIN2, plus the tier 2 resubmissions that are almost certainly likely to come in, it's entirely possible that we would have no money available for any submissions in February. So please keep that in mind. And that those two issues are the underpinnings of why I proposed on behalf of the team to backdate.
Thank you. Okay. This has been a very, very robust counterpoint. So the floor is now open for, well, we're going to have to.
We have a motion on the table.
there is I'm going to ask our legal counsel to restate the motion that we're going to consider with a vote for amendments. Thank you.
And the motion is to amend the.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
All right. No one usually says that. The motion is to amend the CLIN 1 and CLIN 2 concept plans to halt monthly acceptance applications until further review with an as of submission date of January 31, to be clear. That's the motion.
That is the motion and it's been seconded. So
that's correct. So we're moving to vote here.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
You have a hand.
Okay. Mohammed Abu Salam? Not here. Kim Barrett.
No.
George Blumenthal.
Yes.
Maria Bonneville.
Yes.
Monica Carson.
I missed a point of clarification. If we had said no, if this had, doesn't this board have the ability to, even after review, say no to grants, so to protect the funding? I just want that clarification just before I vote. I tried to get that answer, and I just heard two different things in the discussion.
Can you rephrase your question, please?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So the point that was just made in the summary was that if we don't do this, these grants get reviewed and then the money's all gone. Worst case scenario, like they were 5 really great ones. But I'm just asking for a point of clarification and control. If those were all given ones, they still had to come here for a vote. And so they can still, the board still has the ability to control funding by not accepting the scientific review. Is that just, the answer to that affects my vote.
The board does have the ability to say no to grants that have been recommended by the GWG. Yes, that is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Well, given that answer, then I say no.
Okay, Judy Chow.
Yes, approve.
Leandra Clark Harvey.
Yes.
Leon Fine. No. Mark Fisher Colbury.
Yes.
Fred Fisher.
Yes.
Judy Gasson.
No.
Larry Goldstein.
Yes.
David Higgins.
Yes. Yes.
Vito Bashani.
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard.
Yes.
Rich Lahara.
Yes.
Pat Levitt.
No.
Sorry, what was that?
No.
No, thank you. Linda Malkus.
No.
Chris Myskowski.
She's not here.
Not here?
No.
Adriana Padilla.
Yes.
Joe Panetta, sorry.
Yes.
Marv Southern.
No.
No.
Suzanne Sandmeyer.
No.
Carol Watson.
Yes.
And Keith Yamamoto.
No.
It's a 14.
14. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you to the board and to the public for their comments on this difficult issue. Thank you, Raphael, for leading us through it. I'm going to cede the floor to the Vice Chair of the Presidential Search Committee. Yes, Co-chair, sorry. I don't know which one. Board Member Blumenthal. George?
Thank you.
Wait,
Hold on. We're trying to see if we can fix the room. Sorry, George.
Okay, sorry.
On the line.
Can you hear us okay in the room?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sorry, George, thank you.
There you go. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you.
I know we're already over time, but I wanted to give a very brief update on the presidential search. We have been hard at work, and the search committee has met. Prior to that meeting, our partners with the search firm have conducted a number of interviews with stakeholders, and on the order of 25 to 30 interviews with stakeholders. And Kim Barrett, my co-chair, and I have also done some interviews as well to try to understand the views of the board. What you see in the
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but this is the reporter. I still cannot hear Dr. Blumenthal.
We're going to try again.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you very much.
Beth's talking. Can't hear
Beth?
Beth, can you hear us?
Yes, say again, Dr. Blumenthal.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. We'll start again very quickly. I just want to give a very brief update on the presidential search process. We have been busy. Our search firm partners have conducted a number of interviews on the order of 25 to 30 with various stakeholders of CIRM to try to get a better understanding of what some of the interests are. And my co-chair and I, Kim Barrett and I, have also done some interview as well. What is before you today on the agenda, you will see references to 3 documents I want to call your attention to. The first of these is called the Executive Brief, and that is basically the job announcement that will be going out to all potential candidates and prospects. That is a document that was prepared by the search firm. It was reviewed by Scott, Kim, and me, and then further reviewed by the search committee, which approved it. So if you have any comments on that document, please get it to us, I guess, to Scott within the next couple of days. But that is available and it will be going out very soon. The second document that's in the agenda is the candidate competency profile. That document is something that will be sent to candidates for the position, and it will be a way of them putting into a document their qualifications in a form that will be similar for all candidates. And so again, if there are suggestions that you have for how that document might be changed, feel free to, again, to get it to us within the next couple of days. In particular, send it to Scott. And then the third document is a timeline. We will be presenting timelines every time we meet to make sure that we are adhering to the current timeline and identifying any possible slippages that may occur. But the timeline in the immediate future is that we imagine that the executive brief will be going out by the end of this month, so it'll be out by March 1st, with the idea that we will be putting together or we will be seeking applications over the time period of a month, with the idea that starting on April 1st, the search firm will begin to process those applications and put together files that will allow the search committee to begin work in mid-April to try to generate a long list for basically initial interviews. So the time scale is basically now that we're going out for applications. So what I'm suggesting to you is that if you have comments on the first 2 documents, the brief or the candidate competency profile, please get them to us as soon as possible. In the meantime, since we are going out for applications, if there are potential candidates that you know that you think would be a good candidate for the presidency of CIRM, I want to encourage you to encourage them to apply, or at least to get in touch with SRI, the search firm. I think those are the high points of what I wanted to bring forward. Let me invite Kim. Is there anything else, Kim, that you think we should bring forth at this time?
No, I mean, in the interest of time, I will not say very much other than to say that we had a very robust discussion with the search committee and people seem happy with the documents.
And I would entertain any questions now, knowing that we are short on time. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you, co-chairs Barrett, Blumenthal, for your report. I need to open up for final public comment on the agenda so far, but we are out of time. We're not going to consider agenda items 5 or 12 at this meeting. We'll postpone them to the next. Members of the public, any final comments on any item that has not been agendized? We're looking.
We have 22. Yep.
We have 22?
We have one.
How long do we have quorum? We can, I mean, because we can take the other items up in March unless we have quorum for a while.
If we lose one person, we lose quorum. So,
Okay.
I think
Right,
to
22
March.
exactly.
I think to March.
Is there anyone in the public that's wanting to speak? No, there is not. So I think we are done for today then, right? Right? No objections to adjourning. Thank you, everyone. This was a difficult, involved, and complicated meeting, and I appreciate all the help of the staff in getting us to this point. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.